All right. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening. Nate, salute to you as well. Rank and file. Jerry, what's up, guys? Welcome. We're going to be getting to some more Warhammer World Championships. So, for those of you guys who are not aware, this has been going on for quite some time. You've probably been living under a rock, but we're on to round 3. This is now the third group qualifying stage, and there will be additional stages even more after that, but we're starting to pare it down a little bit. There's now only 32 groups. So, yeah, it's going to be a good time, and then the top 2 from each group will be selected to play then in a standard 64 person tournament. So, yeah, we're going to be getting started with some best of 3s, still best of 3 format. Hello, welcome. Let's get to it. Start loading up. We've got game 1 here of a series between SladeX, who definitely a player that I really enjoy watching him play. He's watched some of his games back in round 1 on this channel. Greenskins into Warriors of Chaos, the green one, SladeX versus the green one. So let's get to it. We've got Goblin leadership here, Skarsnik and a Night Goblin Shaman, no Bob, no Goblin Assassin. We do have some Stone Trolls, Mangy Marauders, Air Boys, and Night Goblin Archers, Black Orcs through the center. 3 Black Orcs is pretty heavy, and I mean, they're one of the best infantry units in the game. They just meat grind basically everything, and against Warriors of Chaos makes a lot of sense to go heavily in that direction. Got some Boar Boys, Spider Riders for support. As for the Warriors of Chaos, for green one, Big Bird leading the way. We've got 3 spawns. Interesting choice here. I actually kind of like the choice of the spawn. Greenskins typically don't take a ton of armor. I mean, Black Orc's definitely pretty real here, but that 160 weapon damage is super legit. Also got some Chosen with Halberds. They are going to get mowed down by the Black Orcs cost effectively. I mean, they'll actually, without like buffs and stuff, they'll hold up okay. 56 melee defense, but still, it'll be an interesting trade to see. I mean, they will get, it's a cost-effective engagement definitely for the Black Orcs, but let's see, some Hounds and some Marauders around the side. Not too much Skirmish Cav for the Greenskins, which is nice to see. Typically, the meta, quote-unquote, in this matchup, you definitely take 6 Skirmish Cav as the Greenskins, but this time we've just got some tasteful Mangy Marauders here, and just more of a Crumpin style. Spawn are going to YOLO in. Going straight into the Black Orcs here. That 160 weapon damage will be mitigated quite a bit by that 110 armor of the Black Orcs. I mean, Spawn still have quite a bit of armor-piercing damage, but Skarsnik getting to the front line as well. The Chosen also come in for support, so the 8-peak Loon's just getting absolutely crushed there. They did get some initial damage with the Fanatics, but Slade has the numbers to kind of turn the corner here, and these Chosen, oh man, Stone Trolls managed to get matched up against Chosen. They're going to try and pull out of that fight very wisely. Definitely a horrible engagement for Stone Trolls. But the Daka line getting set and firing in here, you can see the Chaos spawn have already taken a ton of damage, and meanwhile this Black Orc is holding out just fine. We've also got the Wa being popped, Itchy Nuisance, and Fermented Fungi all at the same time here, so Big Bird's going to be very vulnerable, and he'll also obviously be in range, not be able to cast any spells or escape, and the Black Orcs get a giant power spike during that time, up to 60 melee attack. They can make more consistent hits on the Chosen, although the Chosen are still holding out very well. Here, the Chosen and Spawn, I mean, obviously you would expect a much more expensive combination. Matched up 1v1 versus the Black Orc. The Black Orcs do lose, but we've still got a completely healthy unit of Black Orcs over here. Stone Trolls managed to only lose a single model there to the Halberds and are now rallied and coming back to the fight. Speaking of the Halberds, these guys are way out of position now, and they could potentially turn and just focus with everything here, but even just the one Air Boy, I mean, they have really solid APs. They're more or less crossbowmen. Should be considered, right? 6 AP is actually higher than some crossbows. Big Bird also very low on HP at this point, which is weighing pretty heavily on the balance of power. Chaos versus Greenskins, both players go for a heavy rush. You would expect the battle to be pretty quick, but the spawn evaporating. Will the finals be a best of 5? I think they will see. I mean, the final is going to be like a whole final tournament. But the grand final, I actually don't know yet. Yeah, Chosen moving in, just meat grinding Rusty Airs. This is fine. They're getting some value here, but this is not, I mean, they're spending time, which is also another resource. that the Warriors Chaos really don't have a ton of. Black Orcs are now moving in here to kind of mop up on the side of the Chosen along with Skarsnik, and that's just not good for them. This other unit of Chosen here has been shattered, so the elite infantry for Warriors of Chaos just not holding up to all the attrition and so on. And these Marauder Horsemen, I mean, the one thing about Black Orcs, Orc Air Boys, I mean, only 14 defense really isn't great, but 23 attacks not terrible, and especially 34 weapon strength is really good for a skirmish unit. That's like basic infantry, right? Same weapon strength, more or less. So, especially with War or something active, Orc Air Boys can punch hard. I mean, Marauder Horsemen only have 20 melee defense anyway, so actually 23 attack have what is that, like a 38% hit chance, which is decent. Yeah, Spawn versus Greenskins Daka, not good. Exactly. And the Greenskin Daka line definitely got quite a bit of value here, all absolutely paying for themselves. The Black Orcs do a nice job. Even the one that kind of got meat grinded there still ended up getting good value back. And that's the thing about Black Orcs. They're I want to say they're the best infantry in the game. A lot of people would that, but I even might have said so myself differently in different videos in the past, but that's just how it goes. I like the Boar Boys here too, the 650 Boar Boys. Just in general right now, the 650 Boar Boys, one of the most cost-effective low-tier cavalry, kind of low-tier in quotations. 650. Yeah, the Spider Riders also do great. Mangy Marauders, obviously. Like I said, the meta is really to go to 6 Skirmish Cav in this matchup, but Chosen with Halberds is an interesting one. I actually would have gone this same build, literally, but just with Chosen with Shields instead, and probably cut the 2 non-ROR spawn and just go wide. But I actually like the pick of the Big Bird, plus the Shielded Chosen here. They have just good enough stats overall that the Black Orcs don't quite trade so cost-effectively into them. They're also a little bit cheaper, and really with the Armor Sundering, you can kind of target these Black Orcs since they're more or less, I mean, yeah, the Stone Trolls have some armor, but you can definitely deal with them by other means. But anyway, whoops, pay no attention to that. Supposed to have a blocker up, I'm forgetting. Yes, Dancing Warzag fills the whole screen for the time being. That's a little too large and in charge there, Warzag. There we go. Nobody saw that, right? Much better. Super professional, guys, by the way. Yeah. I think Duck and Valkanos probably will stream their own parts. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what. We're still trying to get all of that figured out. Like exactly who's streaming what parts, but I'm probably going to be involved at some capacity. I'm not 100% sure yet. 1,581 matches left until the finals. Yeah, seriously, there's so many battles left. Play. So we'll go to game 2 between these two. Oh yeah. Gotta have the Dancing Warzag blocker. When will Warzag be replaced by some Pistoliers? You know, that's a good question. That's a good question. I'll consider it, Hank. So this time, replay actually flips to Green One's perspective, so he's playing Bretonnia. Triple Trebs versus Vampire Coast. This is an interesting one. I've seen people using trebuchets more recently, and I don't know if they stealth buffed the accuracy at some point of these guys while I wasn't looking, but they seem to be decent now. Blessed Ones especially, you know, have a little bit of magic damage. They're going to get counterfired by a cannon, but there's only a cannon, and also 2 mortars. You know, it's interesting. The mortars I get to go like anti-archer, but I really think that with Vampire Coast you have other tools for killing archers. The cannon's definitely a good pick. I probably would have gone triple cannon or maybe double cannon here. But we got Lamprey's Revenge, some halberds, scurvy dogs, handguns, and bombers. So yeah, Slade playing Coast, not something you see all the time. But Bretonnia here, we got, yeah, the triple Trebs. 2 of them are blessed. Damsel Lore of Life, Lewin, bunch of infantry, including some battle pilgrims. Questing knights, couple of questing knights just for some armor piercing, couple of fire arrows, so quite an infantry-centric composition with triple Trebs. In terms of healing targets, I mean, really you only have the questing knights, but like Battle Pilgrims are actually, this is a matchup where they can do okay. 40 attack, actually not super necessary against most zombie units, but the 36 weapon strength in particular got through, and they have a little bit better leadership, quite a bit better leadership actually than most Bretonnian infantry, so they hold up somewhat better against undead. Really, my biggest gripe with Battle Pilgrims is their low melee defense for the cost. 31 melee defense is less than Empire State Troops, and they're, you know, 50% more expensive. So anyway, a little bit of an artillery duel at the start of this one, so we'll put it on fast forward as the trebuchets are actually winning, believe it or not. And this is one thing I will, you know, I'm famous for despising crumbling. Didn't see Coast on turn stream. Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of... There's enough replays that we can all cast, you know, like long 3-hour streams potentially and never cast the same replay, which is awesome, honestly. But I was going to say, the one... I'm famously known for hating crumbling, right? And thinking that it's arguably kind of overpowered. And on certain units it is, but I will, you know, kind of... I'll give you 1 point. In artillery duels specifically, it is beneficial to have your crew actually run away and then come back, potentially, rather than just crumble, because the HP is so low. Like, this one mortar crew just completely crumbled, and not only that, but I believe the crumbling damage actually affects the pieces themselves. Yeah, you can see how all the mortars are actually destroyed. So if the crew, you know, gets into crumbling while they're, you know, mounted to the cannon, so to speak, the cannons will actually themselves crumble. Whereas if you know, if you see that they're crumbling, if you actually detach and hit them with an invocation of the heck, you know, save them from crumbling, then they can go pick their cannons back up. The cannons won't take damage if they're not mounted to them. So this is probably the only situation in the game where it's actually more beneficial to not have crumbling instead of having crumbling. Yes, there is literally one situation. Like you can see here, this trebuchet crew is gone, but yeah, they might come back. Yeah, they're coming back, and see, like, this crew's also gone. And all their trebuchets are actually destroyed from the cannons, so there's that. But, you know, they can still come stand here. They could potentially, once this unit's used up all of its ammo, you could drop it with this crew. And as long as it's the same artillery type, you could have that other crew come mount this one, and then use their ammo there. Some fun with artillery. But anyway, this has gone on for some time. Basically, the moral of the story is that Bretonnian trebuchets win, because Coast brought mortars instead of cannons, basically. This is the second battle. No, in the first battle, we had a Greenskins Crump Warriors of Chaos, which is typical. Crumbling is balanced since undead stats are garbage. That's correct for the most part, but then, so, like, mid-tier and up, vampire units have, like, equivalent stats, more or less. Like, you compare, like, Nehekara Horsemen to other, or, you know, like, I don't know. Like, their mid-tier units and up, like Tomb Guard even. Tomb Guard have comparable stats to other mid-tier infantry. Grave Guard have even better stats than a lot of other mid-tier infantry. Like, they're just, you know, once you get to the mid-tier and up, like, you know, the stats that matter, they end up being the same, right? Like, for the Shock Cavalry, for example, Black Knights with Lances, 100 points less, right? Undead. They do have lower attack and defense, but not by that much than Reiksguard, but they literally have the same weapon strength and charge bonus as Reiksguard, right? So, it's just Undead Reiksguard for 100 points less, which, I mean, granted, Reiksguard are kind of overpriced, but, like, there's just, in theory, that's correct. But in practice, a lot of units end up having good enough stats that they still trade, like the mid-tier units and high-tier units, I should say, for the most part, still have good enough stats where they trade at cost, which means they're actually OP. And generally, they have better leadership, too, so it's actually harder to make them crumble. Anyway, I'll get off that soapbox for now. Speaking of crumbling, there's not too much crumbling here in the front line yet, although quite a bit of the bombers just been rained out by peasant archers, which is not great. Lamprey's Revenge just get hard charged here by the questing knights, and they also had that, Sword of Corone debuffing their melee defense as well, so that's pretty painful. They've already taken a full model's worth of damage. Start to lose some more here soon, and they are crumbling. Things are not looking great for Vampire Coast right now. Cannon's used up most of its ammunition. Probably has paid for itself shooting at trebuchets, but at the same time, potentially not. Also doing some damage now to these cavalry, but the cavalry already paid for themselves against those Lampreys or bench. Yeah, Noctilus going to try and hold things together here in the center. He's got a handful of handguns, but the few trebuchets that do remain, like this one field trebuchet still online, that barely hanging on to their leadership. They're still online, actually haven't paid for themselves, even still with 70 kills. A little bit extra value there. But, you know, shooting those zombies doesn't really get you a lot of value. It's not necessarily that you bring the trebuchets to necessarily deal a ton of damage. But just in case, you know, apparently they outtrade mortars. Good old Sword of Corone. It's such a great debuff, man. Lewin's a really strong character. It's sad that because the Fan Enchantress is so ludicrously strong, like, you really don't see Lewin that much. But he's one of the strongest flying characters in the game, even still, probably. Just innate self-healing, physical resistance, the potential for missile and magic resistance as well. A lot of flying characters, I feel like, just maybe don't have enough HP. I don't know. It's hard to say. If you compare, like, Lewin has a decent amount of HP, but even still, like, total HP, like Lewin on a Griffin or Carl on the Griffin's not that much more, or potentially even less than, say, like Skarsnik. I really feel like some of the mounts from Game 1 especially need to be looked at and kind of readjusted HP-wise, but eventually Slade's going to throw in the towel there as his waves wash up on shore, and yeah, most of his tech pieces are gone. Most of his damage dealers, like Karenays, did use up all their ammunition. Definitely paid for itself, but yeah, mortars were a lost cause. And I get why you would take them, but just as a kind of a, for those of you guys who are curious, a lot of people forget, but Vampire Coast, you can actually take Scabscrath, like, just like with Vampire Counts, the Gunnery White, just like the White King, has Scabscrath, so going, like, even Noctilus, Double Gunny, if you take him on foot even, but I would definitely recommend on the Crab, you can take Double Scabscrath, and that basically deals with the Archer line, right? So you really don't need to take the mortars, in my mind. You could definitely cut them. I mean, the two Crabs, you'd have to find some other value elsewhere in the army, maybe pare some things down. But I'd probably take the Lamprey's Revenge off and allocate those funds elsewhere. Maybe take a second cannon as well. Yeah. Lewin's the first lord you want a multiplayer battle with. Hey, a lot of people I would imagine would say that, but yeah, he's awesome, man. Triple Crab Squad is good here. Yeah, I like the Pistol Admiral and the Gunnery Crab Triangle. I mean, it's quite strong. Quite strong indeed. So, that does mean we're going to be going to a Game 3 between these two. Thanks, Warzag, once again. Slade taking Dark Elves. And look at this build, man. This battle is literally like naked elf women versus naked northern dudes with some werewolves. And, yeah, so we've got, what is this, 5 Witch Elves? Including Sisters of Sing Doom in the center, 2 Sisters of Slaughter, 1 on each flank here. We've got Dark Riders with shields up front, some more Dark Riders in the back, a couple of Dark Shards, because, of course, you need some ranged, and a couple of Fear Spears. Marathi leading the way, obviously. And for the, you know, Chaos Male side, we've got a bunch of Marauder Infantry, 5 Marauders up front, 3 Marauder Hunters with throwing axes. Interesting choice in this particular matchup, given that the Dark Elves aren't necessarily known for having a lot of heavy armor units. They do bring a few, but I guess maybe to counter Blackguard? That makes sense, actually, when I think about it. He's got some Skin Wolves, Armored Skin Wolves, yeah, Ice Wolves, Beasts of Tashnar. This... Where's Turin? What do you think, Turns? I've been casting this for a while, but anyway, this is a brutal engagement for Norska. Just all across the line, Witch Elves moving in to murder Marauders, and Sisters of Singing Doom here in the center just absolutely eat. One of these units does get crumped on by Skin Wolves, but yeah, very brutal engagement for Norska initially. Fortunately, the Double Wind spell does not quite connect. He does get a hold of this Witch Elf pretty cleanly there with that Penumbral Pendulum, but the boat largely missed. Even still, though, I mean, Witch Elves just cleaning the clock of a Marauder for that much cost, though, I mean, they are quite a bit cheaper if they can overrun now and get into these Hunters. But look at that Murderous Prowess, minute and a half in, barely, and we're already kicking Murderous Prowess, so just a brutal game already. Witch Elves just overrunning into the second line, looking pretty bad for Norska, but at the same time, they're taking damage. Ice Wolves come in here. They actually have 42 weapon strength right now. They're heavily debuffed from Wrathy, so they're probably not getting any hits, but the Ice Wolves actually, high weapon strength, will deal some pretty good damage to those low armor targets. Even Skin Wolves, like, they'll trade okay. Right now, kind of getting crumped over on that side, but the Murderous Prowess, massive power spike here. Norska just gets brutalized right there, but at the same time, you know, they've still got plenty of Skin Wolves. The Skin Wolves are the main piece here. They can regenerate and come back as well. A lot of these, like Ice Wolves and Marauders, will be coming back for a second push, and Dark Elves expended a lot in that initial engagement. Like, a lot of these Witch Elves are very tattered. Sisters of Slaughter, very tattered. Probably haven't got great value at all there, but, you know, they're holding up nonetheless. The Dark Riders are going to be pretty key to try and chase some routing units. The Sisters of Singing Doom, Skin Wolves are somewhat weak to terror, so the Sisters of Singing Doom, very important here as they terrify away those wolf dudes. But, yeah, well, Wulfric maybe got a decent engagement on Morathi initially, but now is just having to avoid, trying to get not trapped up in Witch Elves, which is, you know, you might think some people would want to, and if he was a purely Slaanesh guy, maybe Wulfric would actually want to, but, you know. He's more of a balanced chaos bro, right? So, probably not too into that. A little bit, but maybe not too much. But, oh yeah, man. The Sisters of Singing Doom, look at this. A rear charge on these Hunters. The Hunters immediately rout, get terrified, and then they just eat kills. Look at that. Those kills just racking up there. That is, man, Sisters of Singing Doom. This is maybe the best performance I've seen out of them ever, to be honest. They are just murdering everything. There's no Berserkers here to oppose them, and the Berserkers would definitely clean them out, or at least trade very horribly into them. I say horribly. Both units would just die, is what I really mean. But, yeah, it would be pretty cost-effective, I think, for the Marauders. The Berserkers would probably end up winning out. But Wulfric just can't help but get caught up in the madness of Cain. Eventually, Morathi comes over and is like, all right, ladies, and these few Dark Shards who are in here for some reason. Beer Spears, try and screen. A little bit of poison from the Sisters of Slaughter there. And, yeah, Wulfric, there's no way. Nice Penumbral Pendulum from the Shadow Famir. We'll get rid of the UI and come in close. Just appreciate some of this glory here. As Morathi leads her gals, drag down the bearded bro. Whoops. Yeah, this Sisters of Slaughter, relatively healthy, and in the late game when things start to get tired, that melee defense definitely means even more. But Norska's still got this tight little pocket of Skin Wolves regenerating here. The problem is the Sisters of Singing Doom are actually not taking much damage at all here. And surprisingly, just routing everything, just terror routing everything. Wow, that scream though, that was... there it is. Slade takes home the series in a beautiful, very beautiful fashion. How about those Witch Elves? Man, that initial engagement, I mean, credit to Green One for pulling it back and making the game reasonably interesting, but that was just murderous. Murderous prowess immediately. I mean, Sisters of Singing Doom, 2,000 damage value. A lot of the other Witch Elves actually didn't end up paying for themselves, which is kind of funny. So despite that brutal frontline engagement, I mean, it just goes to show Marauders are cheap and, you know, somewhat expendable. A lot of them actually do end up trading reasonably cost-effectively, too, which is kind of hilarious. On both sides, you know, they murdered each other and everyone had a good time. Everyone paid for themselves, kind of. Yeah. Marauder Hunters ended up being a little bit of a rough pick just by the nature of the build selection here. Definitely expecting Blackguard. That's the reason why you bring these guys. I don't necessarily think you need them if you have the double wins, but that's argument you made there. The Ice Wolves, I do like that pick quite a bit here. The Skin Wolves also can be decent. Maybe just go with more Skirmish Cav, arguably, but at the same time, Definitely can help you sustain things, but yeah, man, brutal game. Very, very fun stuff. Fun stuff, Super Sisters. We seen Soul Stealer? I think there were some Soul Stealers, yeah. I probably just missed casting them, but I'm sure he was using it on the blobs of Monstrous Infantry there. Like, ideally, you just go after the Skin Wolves with those Soul Stealers, but yes, I'm sure I saw the effect go off, yeah. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. So let's get Dance Warzak back up, and we'll go to the next series here. You know, I could do all the fancy stuff with the UI and everything like Turin, but I'm just trying to blaze through these games right now, so... Slade takes the series against the green one. The next one up, we've got the legend himself, Tlaxlan Soothsayer, versus Legatus Leonidas for the E-Clan. So, it should be interesting. Dark Elves versus Empire. And how about this? How about this? Volkmar versus Recarth. I actually have not seen this yet, and I'm curious to see in a live battle action how Recarth does in this situation, because Volkmar is insanely strong in this matchup. He hard counters a lot of what the Dark Elves can bring to the table. Just massive DPS, especially magic DPS, area of effect, shock damage, fire. He's got unbreakable, healing, lots of buffs. What's not to like? Empire Knights, Knights of the Blazing Sun. Got some Outriders as well, Firecaster as is tradition. A couple of Pistoliers, so this build has got a big thumbs up from me. And yeah, as for the Dark Elves, Recarth here, a couple of repeater crossbows mounted up, a couple of Dark Riders with shields, Solo, Sister in the center, Fear Spears, Sad Swords, and the Cold One Knights are pretty good. They trade, if you can get a good charge, they'll trade well into Empire Cavalry, but they are a little squishy to cannons and ranged fire, so you gotta be careful of that. Both players kind of assessing each other. Silver Bullet's going to be opening up some volleys, screening away, Outriders as well. Some nice damage into the repeater crossbows there, dropping a couple models. So it's an interesting one. Recarth as a potential counter for Volkmar. The thing is, Recarth is somewhat squishy. He does have a decent amount of HP, but the idea is if you can get, especially if you can get him somehow enraged in the Sisters of Singing Doom, but regardless, if you can just get Volkmar caught out in a bad position, a quick charge from Recarth, and he will just absolutely devastate. Another thing, too, in relation to the Cold One Knights, Recarth's Lash ability, and of course the regular Beast Lord has this as well, the extra weapon damage and charge bonus is really nice for Cold One Knights. Their charge bonus isn't amazing, they're not really shock cavalry, but they do have great weapon strength, especially with good armor piercing. And you kind of add a little bit of extra charge and that extra weapon strength in particular, they could generate some really nice value into Empire Cavalry with that Lash active. So let's watch for that. Fireball being slung back and forth. Slade manages to dodge it, actually catches it with one of the Knights of the Blazing Sun there. It loses a single model, but don't take too much HP damage overall. Both players kind of just trading a little bit back and forth. Some nice volleys, catching those spearmen with shields. Not too much value, but yes. Recarth isn't that good. Yeah, I generally think the same thing, but I think the best use case for him is arguably on the Chariot, but probably most likely on the Manticore, given that he's not that expensive. He's comparable to a Griffin, like a Combat Griffin Lord, you know, right around that 2,000 cost mark, and he's got a reasonably strong kit. I mean, Manticores are really nice monsters in terms of animations and having a relatively small hitbox in comparison to like a Dragon, for example. Definitely matters. And, you know, all the self-buffs, especially the anti-large, will just allow him to get consistent hits. And Volkmar has 20 melee defense only, so it's not hard for him to be max hit chance with those active, and especially if he can get a timing with Murderous Prowess. But let's see. Right now, both players, both very skilled players, just trading back in this kind of ranged dance, trying to get good positioning. But eventually, Volkmar finds his lane and starts to come in here. Nice rear charge on the Fear Spears, matched up on the Sigmar Sons. Empire getting some nice initial engagements here. Knights starting to break through and roll up the flank here. So yeah, Dark Elf Infantry immediately feeling the pain, but they're responding. got their ranged tools in play, and the knights are in a position to protect, you know, the important targets. And here comes Recarth going for the goon. There's a lot of Empire missile presence here and some potential heavy cavalry that can screen, so he's got to be careful. But the Sisters of Singing Doom are also in here. Could be pretty decisive if they can get Volkmar. He does get enraged. Oh man, gets enraged, and as soon as they do enrage him, you see how they peel to escape not only the banishment, but obviously to go after these units in the back line. But that was a pretty clutch enrage there. Both players firing in with their missile units, and Recarth taking some friendly fire there, but he had a big power spike. Cascading Fire Cloak to juice up Volkmar's melee defense, but he's already taken a lot of damage from Recarth there, just from that one timing push. So pretty interesting. Taking a look at the rest of the battle here, you can see a big cavalry engagement. Cold One Knights were able to trade well, immediately get blasted by another unit, and then there's another Cold One Knight to follow up. So pretty decent engagement for the Dark Elves out on this flank here. They're going to rout some of those Knights. Knights of Blazing Sun trying to pull back, and another very... I mean, I say very quick. The battle's actually been going on for 5 minutes, so a Murderous Prowess finally kicking off, and that is going to give, again, a nice little power spike to the Cold One Knights. Recarth avoiding Volkmar for the time being and just trying to support these cavalry engagements, which is definitely the right call. These Cold One Knights here, Recarth himself obviously also benefiting from that Murderous Prowess, so yeah, they should be able to catch up some of those models there and just, you know, eat some value. Repeater crossbows also staying safe for the time being. As long as they're in, you know, in the equation in the late game, they should be able to. But a really nice block, look at this, by Slade, blocks most of those Dark Riders there from contacting the Silver Bullets. They do still land somewhat of a charge there, but Silver Bullets should be able to get up and get back to it. Outriders also engaging in melee. This is potentially really risky, but especially with Murderous Prowess active, these Dark Riders just a little bit better in terms of stats, but the Outriders not trading that badly at the same time. Like, this is actually, they're holding them in place, so maybe that's enough. Recarth is going to come switch that up, cascading Fire Cloak on those Outriders to help him potentially try and win that fight. Interesting. Also procs Kindle Flame, of course, which is always nice, but here we go. Yes, Pistoliers, shoot Recarth. Yes, this is what I want to see. This is literally all I want to see. Come on, no, no, yes, yes, no. Oh, come on. Just shoot Recarth, Pistoliers, please. There we go. They're mostly shooting the Dark Riders, but it's fine. Recarth, though, at this point, still a reasonable amount of HP. He's getting a little low, but Volkmar, let's see. Yeah, he's regenerating, still has quite a bit of cap space left. Handgunners online, so still honestly anyone's game, but this is, oh, Lash right here on those Empire Knights. This is what I was talking about, and the Empire Knights were already going to lose this anyway, but this is just going to be very, very swift destruction. That Cascading Fire Cloak comes in a little late, quick tear route, and those Empire Knights just got devoured. Yeah, pretty good stuff. I can get the Knights, Cold One Knights here. Yeah, 1400 damage value on these Cold One Knights. Pretty good stuff. Well supported by Recarth, and all of a sudden, it's Recarth versus Volkmar and the Bright Wizard, which is not great, but at the same time, if he can get rid of the Bright Wizard, which, you know, a punch to the face and a quick tear route will do it, Volkmar's got his buffs active, so this is a little bit dangerous for Recarth to just stand and take this, but he also has his buffs active. That extra bonus versus large, very significant. You can see Volkmar taking hits. Yep. And Slade, Soothsayer's going to throw in the towel there. Recarth was, I mean, there's a chance that Volkmar potentially comes back, but the rest of the army was looking pretty tattered. Knights are pretty much all done for. There's still this healthy-ish unit of Cold One Knights, right? Still quite a few Dark Riders left, so I get why he threw in the towel there. But yeah, just another wild one. I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with Recarth's performance against Volkmar there. Somebody was saying earlier that Recarth sucks, but Recarth is going for it. Yeah, I missed a couple of burning heads there, but yeah, it is Sooth playing Empire. You're correct. Yep. I might have said Slade a couple times. My apologies. But it was a pretty close game at the end of the day. You know, it definitely could have turned around based on how the engagements went, but Legatus was able to keep Recarth safe for the most part. And you know, the lore of fire here is pretty good, especially if you're going after Empire ranged units. You can really mix and match whatever lore you want in this slot, but I would personally go with Beast is most thematic, right? And they can also... I really like Beasts against Empire because Manticores are great for supporting either cavalry engagements or going after skirmishers, both of which are extremely valid in this matchup. But Fire's definitely solid as well. He got some decent burning heads there. You know, even Dark Magic, you might not get too many Soul Stealers, but even a couple of Soul Stealers can help turn that cavalry engagement around potentially. So there's a lot of Winds of Magic, Lores of Magic rather, options for Dark Elves. But yeah, Legatus takes that first game. Let's see if Flaxland Soothsayer can bring it back. Empire's side here, Knights of Blazing Sun do a reasonably decent job, a couple of them, but the other ones well countered by the Cold One Knights there. Outriders trade nicely here. Pistoliers basically pay for themselves, so that's great. Volkmar, though, normally gets a lot of value. Today, not so much. Let's get to the next one. Yeah, majority non-AP, exactly. Yeah, and the defense on Recarth, too, I think is like 55 defense, right? So, Volkmar in that engagement without his charge bonus only has, what, 30 effective attack, 40 effective attack, something? Without his buffs active as well. Anyway. Dark Elves OP. Please nerf. Oh, yeah. Yep. So, this time Soothsayer going with Norska, and like as far as Norska builds that go, other than having no range component whatsoever, which I understand why you would do that against Greenskins, this is a strong Norska build. I mean, you've got Wolfric on a Mammoth, double Manticore, Skin Wolves, and whoops, Marauder Infantry. I click on something over here, my apologies. Yeah, this is solid. I mean, this is, it's all strong stuff. Greenskins, somewhat weak to terror, right? So you get the double Manticore, Wolfric on a Mammoth, just strong in general. You've got the Skin Wolves, which Greenskins lack fire damage of any kind, so they're a relatively safe pick in this matchup. They can definitely do some things. Greenskins, on the other hand, go directly hard left turn, and we see two giants with Skarsnik. We've got Black Orcs, Night Goblin Shaman here, a Savage Orc Biggins, some Spider Riders, and an Arachnarok Spider. So essentially this is the single entity Death Blob here with the double giant Spider and Skarsnik all kind of being armor piercing single entities. So Wolfric is definitely going to have to be extremely careful on his Mammoth to avoid that at all costs. These Manticores are also going to have to be very, very careful. They take a little bit of a risky dive here, but the Spider doesn't react directly to them. They're going to be able to hopefully get a quick terror out on those Spider Riders. The Skin Wolves now moving in to actually deal some damage, and yeah, hopefully the Savage Biggins also moving in there. We've got some frontline engagements. Over here, the Skin Wolf Swarm comes in and just nukes a Goblin. Potentially going to follow up, probably bypass that Black Orc and potentially try and come back and get at these Giants. Skin Wolves will definitely trade well into the Giants. Manticores will have to be careful. If they get good, engagements, they can, but the Giants have way more HP. But a nice Burning Head here rips apart that Savage Orc Biggin. That is mad value. That boat mostly actually did friendly fire, but it did get a little chunk of those Black Orcs. Wolfric also moves in to deal with the Black Orcs, but the Monster Mash is coming to him. Giant just whacking, just booty slapping the Mammoth there. So the Mammoth is going to pull away. A little bit of a Cascading Fire Cloak just in case. Make sure that melee defense stays up. Orc will fix it, or sorry, Itchy Nuisance there, debuffing Norska, but as soon as that wears off, Skin Wolves rush in, helping to clean up these Black Orcs. Skarsnik also gets the character debuff here, and he gets matched up on a Manticore, which, believe it or not, is not great for him. The Famir also comes in on the side, and oh man, poor Skarsnik. He does technically have anti-large and charge defense against large, but just getting triple teamed right now by a Mammoth, Manticore, Famir Balefiend. Just a horrible, horrible day for Skarsnik. He gets just stepped on. I mean, granted, he did manage to get the fungi on Wolfric. Wolfric got the enraged there and is now taking quite a bit of damage, but Skarsnik just died a horrible death, which he probably deserves. In fact, he definitely deserves. But this one Mammoth not being in the fight's a little bit rough. I mean, that's kind of the nature, or sorry, not Mammoth, Giant. The nature of Giants is they're pretty slow. The Mammoth being much faster, but once it can get away here, a little bit of poison, some other effects, debuffing speed. But yeah, once it's away, you can definitely stay away from the Giants. And credit to Slade, man. Sorry, not Slade. I've done that twice now. Soothsayer. Credit to Soothsayer here. These Feral Manticores have managed to keep themselves relatively healthy. He's been really good about pulling them back basically every time he charges down with them. So like now, Skarsnik's routed off. You could peel one Manticore, go chase him. You've got the Hounds in good engagements against like Spider Rider Archers too. I didn't really highlight the peripheral engagements too much, but Soothsayer doing a nice job utilizing his light cavalry to his advantage there. But yeah, that initial kind of flank roll up and then just collapse with the Giants coming in a little bit piecemeal from the Spider. Like all the single entities are still alive, except for the one that matters the most, for Skarsnik, getting singled out in that blob and just rudely destroyed by surgical precision. As much as you can call, you know, Manticores and Mammoths just dunking on a single entity, surgical precision. But good targeting, good awareness from Soothsayer, great use of the debuff and timing and everything. And yeah, Skarsnik, I'm sure a lot of people are happy about that after getting wrecked by his fungus. But yeah, poor Skarsnik, and he get eaten by a Manticore. This is probably the finisher right here. The Manticore is one of those monsters that, due to the nature of its animations, it procs its charge bonus a lot. Like, it will push stuff away, kind of like bound away, and then charge back, and yeah, just bad day for Skarsnik. Poor Skarsnik and Gobla. Manticore gets to eat, and that Manticore, man, it's still like full health too. That is probably insane value. Yeah, actually not that much value. Feral Manticore. Both players kind of reforming their lines somewhat, but at this point things are looking pretty grim for the Greenskins. The lack of leadership means that this Ragnarok Spider is going to want to route pretty easily. He's also got plenty of Skin Wolves regenerating, 14 models, 15 models, 13 models. Now moving in to finish off the Giant. A nice Itchy Nuisance, Gork will fix it rather, does debuff the charge bonus somewhat. The speed means that these guys can't cycle charges effectively, right? In theory at least. You can get some poison and so on. But Giants, you see that? Don't even finish a unit model. I think that probably kills. What is it, a 2-shot? Yep, he's dead. Okay, so it is a 2-shot. I mean, I have to math it out. I don't know exactly how much HP Skin Wolves have per model. But evidently, the Giants are not one-shotting them. Yep, and that's army losses. Oddly enough, those Manticores are in fact surgeons, have the medical degree and everything. Medical doctor's degree. Yeah, totally. Dr. Manticore here to see you. That sounds terrifying, but yeah, well played to Sooth there. Great job. The Bale Fiend, a really nice kind of steel chair from the top rope. Like, totally unseen, but definitely it helped contribute to that quite a bit. Some brutal burning heads as well. Across the Savage Orc Biggins, which is what you like to see. Manticore's doing a great job, by both over 1,000 by the end. Windwolves don't necessarily win, but they do, you know, contribute, certainly. Poor Skarsnik, man, that's probably one of the most brutal beatdowns I've seen on Skarsnik. Just poor guy. I mean, I say poor guy, he definitely deserves it. Infantry gets crumped largely. I mean, the single entities, the one Giant absolutely pays for itself, because Spider gets pretty close. So maybe there's something to that, but just spending this much on, especially the Giants, I mean, I like them in certain matchups, but their lack of speed is really a problem. And since Norska's kind of benefit in this matchup is, in many cases, speed, right? And trying to outspeed you. Like, it, for me, it just seems a little counterintuitive to go into a couple big slow monsters, but that's just me. We got a series, though, folks, so let's go ahead and get to Game 3 between these two. Good old Dance Warzag. Depends on splash attacks. Okay, interesting. Black Orcs did kind of badly. Yeah, they got like multi-gooned by the Mammoth and some other stuff. They got put into a really bad situation there, so that was to be expected. But this time, another potentially very tough matchup. Some people would say for Lizardmen, we've got Lizardmen versus Skaven. Ancient Crocs with the Skink Priest Lord Beasts. 5 cohorts, 2 Javs, 4 Pterodons, double Ancient Stegodon. Or not Ancient, sorry. Feral Stegodon, that'd be way too expensive. Double Feral Stegodon, which I love. Cohort of Sotek. Another great piece here. A couple Feral Cold ones, yeah, as I mentioned. And the Umbral Tide. Love this pick here, too, to counter Hell Pits. Or, you know, whatever large unarmored targets, rather, that the Skaven bring. Considering that they have stock, you can kind of keep them hidden. They just straight up ambush and nuke something. On the Skaven side, we've got Morskatar's Hellion, which apparently they did buff the mass on. In theory, this guy's very good. A little bit flimsy stats. I really think you need to have healing to take him effectively, but instead we've got Lord Skrulk, Assassin, Hell Pit Abomination, Rat Ogres here, Council Guard, no mortars, but do have some more Rat Ogres, Gatling Guns. We do have some globes, couple globes. Never hurts, lots of chaff as always. But yeah, this is the issue with Morskatar's Hellion right here. Low armor, very expensive piece, going to take a lot of damage from the Pterodons and also from the Umbral Tide, obviously, but Rattling Guns really need to open up here. Yeah, there we go. Rattling Guns are a pretty nice counter for Pterodons. But the Morskatar's Hellion just getting absolutely nuked here early on. It's definitely not great. Speaking of nuked, Skaven Slaves, as you would imagine, not doing great, but at the same time, you know, their job is more or less just to hold temporarily. Which they are, I guess, doing. We've got a little bit of a summon here as well, blocking up the Court of Sotek. And other units, Ancient Croxy pushing heavy on this flank. We've got both the Feral Stegodons through. And some Cold One Riders also collapsing here. The Dread Column formation from the Javelins. You can see how he's just bypassing this Hell Pit Abomination. Hell Pits, again, relatively slow. They can only be in one place at one time, so just outmaneuver it. Got a Plague Monk summon moving in to start to blend up some Skinks. He's, man, a great job by, like, concentrating force here in both these games from Soothsayer, just nuking units, absolutely destroying them. We do have the Council Guard in a really good position, though, and these Cold One Riders get shredded. Both the Stegodons actually are able to pull back there, but Hell Pit Abomination makes its way into the fight, and suddenly Crocs Ancient's in a really bad spot. It's probably going to go down here. You can see how he doesn't have the true Chad Mass to fully pull through. He eventually is going to get loose. And then he's not. He just gets ransacked there by the Morskatar's Hellion. Punches him straight into another blob of Summoned Clan Rats, which he should be able to get through. Maybe a little bit of a benefit to him there, but yeah. Skinks getting on these Rattling Guns, shutting them down, very important. You can see they already ripped up a few of the Pterodons there. A lot of Skaven troops have routed, but a lot are coming back. I mean, it's mostly Skink front line here, so they don't have that much staying power. And Umbral Tide also, the Assassin trying to chase them down, which is a decent play as long as you can keep that thing from those things from firing. Will be very beneficial. Morskatar's Hellion eventually does come through and get some damage on the Crocs Ancient. Now turns around with the Hell Pit 2v1. This is a great situation for the Skaven to try and do some damage, but man. Hell Pit just getting bullied. Was that a match combat animation there? I don't know. It's hard to tell. In theory, though, this 2v1, you see the Cold-Blooded being used to help kind of hold the leadership together. Yeah, that is a match combat animation. Wow, I don't know if I've ever seen that one before. Like a little ram and slapback. Like, ouchie, that hurts. Smashes them in the face. But anyway, Morskatar's Hellion moving away now, probably going to get finished off by these Pterodons and the Javs. Yep, mad value city there on the Happy Javelin Day. Hell Pit comes through for a Terror Route. Doesn't actually get the Terror Route, unfortunately. But Skrulk's here in the center. I haven't really paid attention to his Liber Bubonicus charges, what he's been using it on. But probably might be saving one to try and finish the Crocs Ancient here. You know, there's just a lot of targets you could potentially use that. But Rod of Corruption? Nope, that's in fact Flock of Doom. Doing some damage to the Skaven. Right now, things very, very even in terms of the balance of power. A little bit of damage here on these Rat Ogres. And the Poison Wind Globe still staying protected. Probably generated some really nice value. We'll check in on that later. But very critically, the Umbral Tide. As long as the Umbral Tide are alive, they can come in, you know, if they're safe, regardless. They can come in and just finish off that Hell Pit Abomination, and that's kind of, for me, like the deciding factor at this point in the game is can you keep those Umbral Tide protected and, you know, use them to finish off the Hell Pit. And the Assassin has just been trained on them the whole time. Probably going to finish off the Crocs Ancient now, potentially. Triple single entity. Oh, and he does. He gets the assassination kill on the Ancient there, but then just gets destroyed by Stegodons, immediately terrified. And now, this leaves the Umbral Tide with a relatively free firing lane to try and finish the Hell Pit here. Hell Pit moving in, trying to bail out those globes one more time. The Cold Wind Riders still hanging around. Their leadership is pretty solid, so they're going to pull away potentially. Might get Terror routed, but they were able to hold up for some time. Another Rod of Corruption there. Nope, Flock of Doom. Trying to finish off the Council Guard. That Assassin, though, just horrible day for the Assassin. Gets double-teamed by 2 Feral Stegodons. Great value from them. Summons and so on, and Clan Rats and different things, all trying to go after these Umbral Tide. But the balance power slowly starting to tell in Soothsayer's favor as he finishes off more units, kind of gets some shatters, chases some units off. And a lot of that will rely on the Hell Pit's HP. You'll see as it regenerates, this kind of ticks back towards the Skaven's favor. Skrulk also relatively healthy at this point, but he's got to be careful now not to get caught out by the double Stegodon mash. They will just absolutely step all over him. Oh yeah, the Route Ogre RKO, right? That was wild. You know what else is wild? This thing. Absolutely insane. Those Cold One Riders are also pretty wild, holding out admirably and somehow not getting terror routed there, just fighting to the bitter end. Pretty impressive stuff. And the Pterodons, the few that do remain, I mean, we've got 3 here and 4 here, just using their Poison Javelins, keeping that, actually not using it at the moment. They're saving their ammo. Here come the Umbral Tide, though. Ooh, and actually don't make contact with that many, but those that they do, does a lot of damage. And outmaneuver Skrulk here. Gets one bop. And the Salamander's like, rude, that thing stinks. They're gonna run over here as the Stegodon switches places, and yeah, poor Skrulk boy. Uh-oh. Run, Skrulk, run! Oh no! Oh! Ah, filthy rat. Definitely deserves it. Umbral Tide roasting in the background. Beautiful day in the Chaos Wastes. Yep, that's it. Oh, fun stuff. The Crocs score Ancient, you know, he gives it up. I feel that that's appropriate, you know, for him to sacrifice himself for the Skinks to carry the day. And, you know, the 1 unit of Saurus Cav as well, just about pay with themselves. Umbral Tide in the late game, super decisive. Even in the early game, too, just ripping apart the Morskatar's Hellion. Straight up roasting it there. Skinks, great job for the most part. 120 kills especially. Extra snacks for those Skinks. 92 here as well, not too bad. Javelins get some great value and some nice kills. The Feral Cold Ones, I actually like this pick as a kind of a fire and forget missile at weapons teams. They don't actually end up paying for themselves, but they're here. Feral Stegodons don't need to do too much to pay for themselves, and they largely do. Pterodons, same thing. It was honestly a pretty close game at the end of the day. Yeah, the Morskatar's Hellion and the Hell Pit Abomination just taking way too much damage there was really the biggest issue for Skaven. They really didn't recoup their value. The Rattling Guns did a good job. Globes also, if you can keep them protected, are insanely cost-effective. Route Ogres, some of them do well, some of them do not. Pay situation's not great, but the Skaven, even still, were almost carried by the Globes and some other things. So, yeah, fun one. Soothsayer ends up taking home the series, but very well played to Legatus. Life finds a way. Fun. We've got another series to get through, so Orzag, thank you. Let's go to Dragon Turtle versus Satensia. So we've got Empire Mirror. Yes, that's right, Empire Mirror match. So at least we know we get to see Empire win one match today. Question is, will it be Boris or will it be Marcus? At least they actually took different lords this time, so we can tell the forces apart a little bit. So Boris brought, he's got some Empire Knights here, a single cannon, 3 Empire Knights, some Spearmen, Handgunners, including Silver Bullets, Swordsmen, Sigmar Sons obviously, and Lore of Beasts for Manticore Summons. Marcus also brought Manticore Summons there in the back, but Lore of Death as well. He's got some spearmen, quad cannon. So Marcus going all in for the ranged attack, which is to be expected. Also 3 Empire Knights. Hammer of Witches, one of the cannons. So a lot of investment there on that artillery. Let's see if it pays for itself. Boris definitely going to have to be careful. There's a lot of range pressure to potentially go after him. He can regenerate, obviously, but doesn't have the biggest HP pool to begin with, so he's got to be careful. And right now, just getting clipped by cannonballs. Let's get in close. Watch Boris as he eats fire and brimstone and, you know, bow shots as well. Just all of the projectile types, basically, at this point. 4 cannons. Yeah, triple feral SEM for the lizards is a lot. Yeah, especially the Stegodons, man. Stegodons are no joke. Like, the Bastillodons, I mean, they're mostly just terror for 650. Like, their damage output isn't amazing. They'll tank damage pretty well, but they're not going to put out the... Stegodons, definitely their charge bonus, weapon strength for the cost are insanely good. Like, definitely the best weapon strength for cost on a monster. Plus 76 charge, too, which is just ridiculous. Got some nice Empire Knight on Empire Knight. Kind of clean, noble joust here. Let's see who comes out on top. Yeah, looks like Marcus Empire Knights actually... I don't know if they had a little bit of a slope advantage there. Looks like potentially they did. It's hard to say. But, yeah, cannon-wise... I'm not sure what the quad cannons are shooting at. Let's see. Besides Boris, which they're going to have a little bit of a hard time making consistent contact if he's dodging. Definitely looks like the Amber Wizard was destroyed. They haven't evidently been focusing on the Knights that much, though, because all these Empire Knights still have all their models, more or less, which is potentially a mistake. The Knights eventually go 2-on-1 for Marcus over here and win this engagement, but you see how... Boris's cannon is actually firing into the cavalry engagement, which is the whole point of taking the cannons here is to counter knights. So, yeah, over here, now the quad cannon starts to focus, and you can see how quickly these Empire Knights get absolutely crumped. Same thing here. But Silver Bullets come forward. They draw a bead on Marcus. They're going to switch on over to these Empire Knights, try and stem the tide a little bit. We do have some halberds as well. Clutch halberdier play, moving in to support the cavalry engagement. Meanwhile, in the back, Boris drops down. He gets countered by a Manticore, so big bad day for Boris. He needs to get the heck out of dodge. And then, yeah, as far as the rest of the battle goes, the Amber Wizard coming back from route. Marcus just kind of chilling in the back here. The infantry fight, though, I mean, a lot of swordsmen, which means the largely spearman force of Marcus will eventually lose, and the halberdiers and handgunners making a pretty decisive quality difference in helping to beat back the Empire Knights, which had been, so far, pretty successful. Cannons are all still online, though, and Boris is barely hanging on. Did not route there, in fact, got really close, but he is faster than the Manticore, 90 speed versus 85, so he can now outmaneuver and try and heal back up, as long as he doesn't get killed by cannons, which it looks like the cannons are, this one's at least focused on him. The Hammer of Witches disengaged from their piece for some reason. They should really go get back on that. But the problem is, all the protection for Marcus's artillery crews is gone, basically, right? Like, we've got this one spearman unit, but so much was spent on the cannons themselves that it ends up not being enough to actually protect, and Boris's infantry eventually get through and start to beat up the artillery crews here. Very confusing fight in terms of colors, actually looking up close, but anyway. Yeah. Yeah, so cannons getting compromised here. The Manticore and other units going to try and at least kind of make one little pocket here. And all the meanwhile, Boris is still taking cannon shots to the face, chasing this Empire Knights, Spearmen, other troops away. But he has been taking consistent damage. Both cannons firing danger close. Might actually take some friendly fire from his own cannon, but... Hey, what's up, Wicked? Mirror, yes, mirror. Someone sure wants to snipe, right? Credit to Boris. I mean, he's stayed alive here. He's taken quite a bit of damage, quickly approaching his healing cap, but he stayed alive long enough for the army of his, you know, his Empire Knights, swordsmen, state troops, what else, and get through, get on the cannons and shut them down. And at this point, there's just the one cannon left, which granted is still threatening to Boris, but certainly less so. And he's still got most of his archer, crossbowman, handgunner presence in place. So, yeah, can continue to just stand and shoot for the most part. You can see all of these ranged units are completely intact, whereas the Marcus's ranged units have all been shut down, more or less, right? And that's a pretty key difference here. BBB is in the house. Welcome. Haha, yes. We've had a few BBB games today. Some awesome series. Marcus came in with 8 units of state troops, still couldn't protect. I mean, yeah. Did he actually have 8 units of state troops, though? I'll have to go back and see. The halberds and the handguns, I do think, make a pretty considerable difference, though. And, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Definitely very interesting. Silver bullets did some damage. Yes, they did. Indeed, they did. We'll have a look at all the handgun values after the fact, but at this point, it's just trying to clean up what's left. A few more artillery crews. Maybe a little bit of an overspend. I don't know. I see a lot of people go for like the Cannons Marcus meta in this mirror. I have seen this mirror a few times. It is one of the mirrors you actually do see on occasion. But 4 swords, 4 spearmen. Yeah, maybe. We'll look. We will look. Yeah, well, 3 swords, 5 spears. It still couldn't keep those cannons protected. I mean, granted, 3 swords here, including the Sigmar Sons, which come in here and mop up 111 kills, a ton of value. Plus, something else to consider as well is that the crossbowmen and the handgunners are also contributing to that infantry fight for a good portion of that. And the cannons there, yeah, just the 1 cannon, tasteful, does pay for itself here, whereas on the other side, the cannons are a little bit more of a mixed bag. The 1 does a great job, but the other 3 are kind of arguably overkill. Boris was able to survive, right? And like he nuked the caster. The caster was absolutely not an issue, but yeah, spearmen and swordsmen definitely carrying pretty well there. The halberdiers as well, of course, against the Empire Knights. Empire Knights versus Empire Knights, kind of everyone dies and no one pays for themselves, so you're all sad. But anyway, that's that one. GG indeed. Yeah, it was a close one. Just narrowly, though, Boris's force is able to take the day. So let's get Warzag back up here. And we'll go to Dragon Turtle versus Satencia round 2. This time, Greenskins versus Warriors of Chaos. And we've seen this one once before. Let's see if Dragon Turtle can take home the win. He's got a Hell Cannon, interesting choice. The Giant also, I don't totally hate that, although it might be a little bit vulnerable to the 6th Skirmish Cavalry that Greenskins have brought, which is definitely the right call in this matchup. We've got a Troll Hag, Grimgore Ironhide, which I actually love this pick in this matchup. Yes. The boss is here. And he's got 3 Black Orcs as well, so a very heavy armor piercing, immune to psychology presence. We've got the Swamp Things, Regiment of Renowned Stone Trolls for some terror. And also, yeah, Rock Lobber, not the ROR, but still. Chaos here, Big Bird coming up, taking some skirmish fire to the face. We've got the Hell Cannon currently getting Spirit Leeched. Chaos Armored Trolls, Mirror Guard here, great weapons, more Marauders. A lot of Marauders, I like that actually. Chaos Warriors with Halberds. So we're going to fast forward a little bit as the Skirmish Cav kind of poke and prod. We've got some Marauder Horsemen and the Hounds over here as well. Hell Cannon is just shooting whatever it comes into range, more or less, which is mostly Skirmish Cav. But this whole time, what's basically happening is that the Troll Hag is coming forward, dropping a Spirit Leech, and then pulling back. Cost effective for her to do so, and only a few Spirit Leeches. You can see Overcast for the additional range. Soul of Damnation. Eventually, this is going to destroy the artillery piece over time, so it kind of just depends. Big Bird over here chasing some Wolf Rider Archers, gets a little bit of a chunk of them. You can see some Marauders come out to play. Yeah, they're just generally trading, right, in the light cavalry fight, which really doesn't matter all that much. Greenskins just have more, right? So, probably still win. Yes. And eventually the Spirit Leech comes to town, and Still alive for the moment. Big Bird's actually taking a surprising amount of damage considering it's just a bunch of low-tier bows. But, I mean, the volume is one way to deal with him, with his resistances, the way it works. I mean, just more volume of arrows. Each arrow has kind of a minimum amount of damage it will do, so greater volume is better than just higher damage arrows, actually. Yeah, Soul of Damnation still going. One more Spirit Leech. Actually is getting some value on Black Orcs now, though, which is better, definitely. But, yeah, that Spirit Leech should do it. Maybe. Nope. Looks like it needs one more. And all the meanwhile, there's, you know, stuff going on out here in the background. Wolves getting routed off. The Marauder Horsemen losing largely. So, yeah, Marauder Horsemen also kind of just chilling in the back here. Safe and sound. And there goes the Hell Cannon. Okay, so Hell Cannon's now offline. And the Greenskins moving in. Goblins actually trade pretty decently against Marauders if they have the right buffs. But yeah, the issue is that Big Bird, I mean, he can catch the Greenskins Light Cavalry when he gets his charge animation, but he's still not insanely fast. So there's something to be considered there. Nice Searing Doom. Dropping some hot lead on those Black Orcs, but Big Bird's already taking a lot of damage here. Could be problematic for leadership of Warriors of Chaos. Plague of Rust. Nope, you're next. Oh man, Grimgore moving in for the kill. Minus 48% speed too, so Big Bird's down to only 32 speed. Look at him, just sad shuffling like, Grimgore still can't catch up to him, but it's fine. Grimgore will just blend some Marauders there. For the time being, Wah being popped. And actually, Black Orcs taking a surprising amount of damage. They're definitely punching back pretty hard, but that Giant seeming to be a pretty solid pick so far. Nice clean engagement with Black Orcs just demolishing Marauder great weapons, as to be expected. Even the Armored Trolls moving in, I don't think those Armored Trolls are going to fare much better. But, yeah, leadership is starting to become an issue. You can see Marauders collapsing. There's mostly just Marauders. This central pocket of the Giant and the Mirror Guard is holding firm, but the rest of the lines is being torn apart here. Man, Chaos Giant's so ugly, dude. Like, I forget sometimes how ugly he actually is as he slams a Black Orc around there. Big old Overcast Searing Doom. Got some Fanatics being cast as well. Yeah, the, wow. Catapult, I mean, still online. These dogs were sent back there to shut down the catapult, but the Swamp Things were able to protect with terror. Maybe an over-allocation of resources, but the Swamp Things, I guess, you know, they weren't actually needed in the front line, right? Yeah, Marauders were perfectly taken care of there. Troll Hag moving away before she gets beat down too hard by the Giant. But yeah, Spider Riders, that poison is super strong. Their DPS actually isn't very good at all, Spider Riders, but the poison is really what you bring them for, right? Their DPS is actually pretty bad, especially in comparison to something like Horsemen or Horse Masters. Like, Horsemen and Horse Masters have some of the highest DPS, same thing with Pistoliers, right? Like, their DPS. The thing, though, that the Wolf Riders and Spider Riders both have is a slight ranged advantage over the Javelins. I think Pistoliers is maybe the same. I need to double check. I know I don't know the range of Pistoliers off the top of my head, which is probably a shame. But here we go. Grimgore going to fight a Giant now. Of course, won't be a fair fight. Troll Hag's going to come in and try and make a difference, but yeah, they're not there to deal damage. That is true. That is true. Their melee stats are also quite good for Skirmish Cavalry. But yeah. Warriors of Chaos holding out still. Mirror Guard. Oh, that nasty Fanatics cast. Oh, man. Oh, just the finishing blow there on the Mirror Guard. Brutal stuff. Black Orcs drag down a few more. Giant getting crumped. Grimgore actually doing a really nice job here along with the Troll Hag. The Troll Hag tanks damage quite well for Grimgore. Grimgore slaying the Chaos Dawi artillery crew. They're distracting him from the Giant fight. Get away from me, rats. Yes, there we go. Wants to fight the Giant. Grimgore really needs, like, matched animations where he just, like, grabs the Giant's ankle and throws him on the ground or something. Pistoliers have 80 range. There we go. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was thinking they were shorter. So the Spider Riders, and especially Wolf Riders, like if you want like just cost effectiveness, pure cost effectiveness, Wolf Rider archers actually deal, I think they deal the same missile damage as Spider Riders, but they have more models and they cost less. So, you know, value-wise, that's a much better proposition in terms of damage output. And again, a ranged advantage over those other skirmish cav I mentioned as well. So you can, if you're on top of your micro, trade super cost effective into enemy skirmish cav. Like, because of the volume, price, and range, probably the Wolf Riders are the best kind of counter-skirmish cavalry, if that makes sense at all. Anyway, GG, well played. Satentia wins that one. Grimgor leading his Black Orcs to victory there, just crumping the front line. River Troll Hag doing some nice cycle charging too, and getting some damage in there. Spirit Leeching the Hell Cannon, very key. Always a nice tool to have, and in this matchup too, you might not think about the Hell Cannon as a big deal, but it can be. But look at this, this is what I'm talking about. In terms of cost-effective damage, Wolf Riders are heads and shoulders above Spider Riders, but the Spider Riders are still very good, don't get me wrong. But yeah, damage output-wise, like they actually output largely more damage. This one isn't the best case, but yeah. Man, almost 900 damage value on one is insane, considering how cheap they are. Yeah, Spiders 100 range, exactly. Yeah, Spiders and Wolf Riders both 100 range. Well, they outrange Javelins and they outrange Pistoliers, which is very good. But very well played to Satentia. Yeah, 6 Skirmish Cav is kind of the meta. Versus Norska and Warriors of Chaos both, I would say. It is a good idea. So, put Wurzag back up here. And let's go to game 3 between these two. Dargon Turtle. There we go. Yes. Tomb Kings versus Dark Elves and a Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow on a Pegasus, on a Dark Pegasus. A very kind of off-meta pick, but potentially quite good in this matchup. Tomb Kings can't really challenge you in the air with anything besides Carrion, which he'll beat, obviously. Got his little armor-piercing crossbow, double shot, try and get some high-value damage. In terms of the rest of the army, also decent enough stats, 60 attack, 65 charge, 400 weapon strength, 45 defense. Low HP, but he's here. We've got Bleak Swords, Corsairs, Red Spears, yeah, Dark Shards, a Reaper Bolt Thrower, a couple of Cold One Knights, and Arc Riders with shields on the Tomb King side. Double Scorpion up in Vanguard. Lich Priest Lore of Death. Got a single Skelly Chariot. Some Nehekara Horsemen. Second Skelly Chariot, in fact. Screaming Meme Catapult. Chosen of the Gods. Cetra on horseback. Interesting choice. He's anti-large armor piercing. Reasonable speed. 76 speed. Decent stats. 80 armor. A pretty good horse lord. Relatively expensive, though. And you can see already the volley of dark arrows landing home, not doing any damage at all, but Chosen of the Gods, let's see if that anti-air should do a lot of damage. Lots of Spirit Leeches back and forth. Sounds like, yep, just both players Spirit Leeching each other. One player, Tomb King Spirit Leeching the Dreadlord, it looks like, and the Sorceress Spirit Leeching the Lich Priest. So a little bit of a Leech triangle there, but Chariots move in, immediately get on those Bleak Swords. The charge seems a little limp. They immediately pull away as the Cold One Knights are kind of hanging around here as well. Ooh, this is bad. This unit of Chariots kind of weirdly caught up on the rock right here. Cold One Knights pushing them away. Cold One Knights do actually get the charge animation landed. They're going to do a ton of damage here, so let's kind of keep an eye on that. Nehekara Horsemen swinging down, so a big old escalation of forces here. Suddenly the Chariots are like, no, 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 just kidding. We want to play. We want to play. Come back. And so they turn around and now charge the Cold One Knights. So both players playing a little bit of cat and mouse there. Screaming Memes. The one benefit you can see here is that the bolt throwers all this time have been like walking forward to try and get an angle of fire, and they're just now opening up. I mean, granted, they're doing some nice damage to the Chosen of the Gods, but the whole time the Screaming Memes been firing. Hasn't actually been doing all that much damage, but hey, that's besides the point. Chosen of the Gods getting taken down by the bolt throwers, though, is going to be pretty good for the Dark Elves. That'll be pretty key, keeping that Dreadlord alive. No Fire Mage, right? Just death instead. No fire against Tomb Kings. You don't always need it. These Cold One Knights here, they don't have the best sustained combat stats, but they are going to have to hold up for quite some time against Nekara Horsemen. There's a Scorpion here. They're not alone, though. Here come the Dark Riders. Charging down the hill. Got some spears moving in as well for supports. Also, skeletons. Not skeleton spears, just skeleton warriors. So both players kind of throwing in some additional forces there. Tomb Kings initially very nicely done in terms of evening up the infantry fight. They do some damage and terrify away some of these fierce spears and sad swords. The chariots collapsing, doing some nice damage, but eventually getting stopped up and starting to take damage from the fierce spears there. So far, things looking pretty good for the Tomb Kings, but in terms of character situation, the Lich Priest Lord of Death not super healthy at this point. Likewise, right now, it looks like the Dreadlord's just been focusing on the Tomb Scorpion, which is definitely a solid option. Now turning his attention over to Cetra. Cetra way out here by himself in a pretty risky situation, and this giant kind of pitched cavalry engagement here still going on, and starting to favor Dark Elves, especially now with Murderous Prowess kicking off. They've got the spears mixed in here. This is going to be a bad situation for the Tomb Kings all of a sudden. And they've been held up for quite some time in that position. That then allows some of these other tools to get loose, like these Cold One Knights swing over. They're able to block up this Tomb Scorpion. The other Tomb Scorpion got into the artillery crew, but the other artillery is still online. And one thing a lot of people forget is that Murderous Prowess actually buffs missile damage. So you can see, if you were to compare this to like a High Elf Bolt Thrower, for example, this is why they have slightly lower ranges. They actually get a pretty nice damage spike while this is active. So doing some good DPS to that Scorpion there. More damage on the Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow. He's got to be careful. Deathcaster's still alive, and Chosen of the Gods are as well. So there's a few threats to finish him off, but yeah, let's see. Anyone's game it's still at this point. Tomb Scorpion, eventually Cold One Knights kind of swing away. They're going to finish those chariots. Nekara Horsemen, though, ready for the counter swarm. And, ooh, this is potentially pretty rough for these Cold One Knights. Hey, they should do okay here, all things considered, but this is a lot of numbers for them to have to fight, and yeah, that low melee defense, you can see they're taking consistent damage from those Nekara Horsemen. Would like to see a quick Invocation of Cursed Blades, if he has it. Doesn't look like Cetra, he does have it. Okay, so quick Cursed Blades on those guys, give them a little anti-large, and they would just start to tear apart those Cold One Knights. That little bit of extra bonus, but right now still doing okay. Eventually they do get the terror route with Scorpion. Let's check in though on the Dreadlord. Yep, still alive. And I mean the resources that have been allocated to try and kill him too. He is super cheap. I am angry. I will shoot my artillery harder. Seriously though, like aim better because you're mad. You know, hit weak points because you're mad. It's great. It's fantastic. Like, I'm gonna double string my crossbow. You know, I don't know. I'll pull it back extra hard. It's a little silly, but it's still really good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, and I mean, they're all crossbows, right? So it's not like any of them are actually using, you know, manually firing a longbow, for example, right? Or like throwing a javelin, where it would arguably maybe make a little bit more sense. But Tomb King's going for a desperate last stand around this hill here. And Nekara Horseman still alive, Cetra's still alive, but just all very low at this point. Bolt Thrower's online. Yeah, Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow still online. Chosen of the Gods, technically still alive, but Incantation of Smiting. Interesting. I'm questioning the magic use a little bit of the Tomb Kings here, but at the same time, I kind of understand. Like, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have taken the Deathcaster. Just take Cetra by himself and just spam spells with him. That's just me. Reload reduction would make more sense. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Look at the Dreadlord dodging. Oh yeah, just juking straight up. The harder you pull the trigger, the more damage you deal. Yeah, that's, I mean, that's, everyone knows that's 100% factually correct. Yes. Facts. The more you know. the more Tomb Scorpions will crumble. Anyway. Those bolts needed to be painted red. Oh, make them go faster for sure. There we go. Dargon Turtle takes home the series, and very well played to Satensia. It was really nice back and forth, but super close there at the end. Pretty critical, though, that the one bolt thrower was able to stay online. Both bolt throwers actually pay for themselves here, which is quite nice. Repeater crossbows also do a decent job. Cold One Knights doing their part. The Corsairs, really nice pick in this matchup. They don't actually get that much value, but they blend all the skeletons that you would ask them to. Trade all right into Tomb Guard as well. Fear Spears actually all do very nice. Fear Spears, interestingly enough, like Spears and Halberds are probably arguably the biggest beneficiaries of Murderous Prowess, in my mind at least, because of a few reasons. Number one, they're more likely to be fighting a target that actually causes fear or terror because they're fighting large targets. And number two, they tend to have low melee attack to begin with. So the extra melee attack helps them, you know, kind of proportionally more so than it would other units because they lack that stat. And it just helps them put out a little bit of extra damage, especially against kind of the lower armor targets, like mid-armor targets, kind of like what Tomb Kings had here. Fear Spears all do a great job. Dark Elves are on fire today, right? Dark Elves, yeah, Ice Power, you missed it. We've had Dark Elves are 3-0 today so far, right? In games, so... Yeah. Yeah, 3-0 for Dark Elves. We actually had, believe it or not, Ice Power earlier. You should definitely scroll back and check, but we had Legatus beat Soothsayer with Recarth, like gooning Volkmar, basically. So, yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, someone else is mentioning it in chat. You definitely go watch that. But anyway, Dark Elves. It's a good day for Dark Elves today. Let's go ahead and I've got probably one more series to show you guys. Yes. Let's do... Well, I got time for two more, I think. Let's do two. So let's do now Puggington versus Hanodins. Hanodins here taking Dark Elves. And Puggington taking Vampire Counts. Now, this is a matchup that you will run into with Vampire Counts, depending on kind of the pick and ban situation. The Elf factions, in most people's minds, are the toughest. But Dark Elves, I would say, are the easiest of any of the Elf factions. Now, a couple things in kind of to begin with. In regards to this build here, this build is pretty strong, but it's not as strong as it could be. There's not, 2 to 3 Blackguard. Instead, we've got the Blades of Blood Queen mixed in here, which I understand for countering Graveguard. They're also, give some physical resistance to Marathi and the Death Hag here, so that makes sense why you would have them. But in some people's opinion, it would be more optimal to have just more Blackguard. We've got Witch Elves here. The Charybdis is really the weird one for me. I mean, it does have poison, anti-large armor piercing, but no healing, relatively low leadership. I don't know. Maybe it'll do well. We do have some Blackguard, though, some Fear Spears, including the Helebroni. And, yeah, the 2 Blackguard, I should say. So, instead of the 3rd Blackguard, you option in the Blades of the Blood Queen, which there's arguments to be made on both sides. Maybe you do want the Blades of the Blood Queen, maybe you don't. But this build is more or less something I've talked to Puggington a few times, and I've casted a few of his replays from previous World Championship series with his Vampire Counts into Dark Elves specifically. And a few things here that I kind of would mention as being very good. From an army composition standpoint, he's got 2 Corpse Carts, both of which are very good. He's got an Unholy Lodestone for healing, and actually the Balefire here I do like, just to slow down the rate of Soul Stealers. Marathi's still going to get all of her Soul Stealers, but you can consistently slow them down, so you have a little bit more downtime of healing in between. Got 2 White Kings with Scab's Wrath, and a Mortis Engine, plus Kemmler for Krell, obviously. Kemmler's got a relatively light loadout, he's on foot, relatively cheap, and that's kind of the point, is once you fire Krell off, you don't need to worry so much about protecting him from an air snipe. potentially, because that is something you also have to prepare for. Me, personally, I would have gone with a little bit more of a cavalry-centric composition, but Puggington instead going with Graveguard with great weapons, which are also very good here. Especially with the Corpse Cart support, they can actually trade well into the Blackguard. Just on their own, their stats really aren't great enough to trade. I mean, they'll trade pretty well into the Blackguard, but only 26 attack. They've got a decent bonus versus infantry as well, but that Corpse Cart just helps swing things that much more in their favor. Yeah, like I said, I would go with more cavalry focus than this, but the Mortis Engine with Kemmler, Double White King, couple of Corpse Carts, all very strong tools to have kind of in unison here. Mortis Engine, as long as it doesn't sit on top of the halberds, can get some really nice drain damage in, but yeah, the assassin's way better in every way. I would largely agree, and I think he does have an assassin here. I want to say. Maybe not. Yeah, there's a Canine assassin here in the back. But Scab Scratch comes through. You can see it doesn't do a whole lot to the Blades of the Blood Queen, but the Hellebronai just get absolutely ripped apart there. Nice Soul Stealer in the center. Does not actually catch the Claw of Nagash. Claw of Nagash has magic resistance anyway, which is why you specifically want it rather than the regular Mortis Engine in this matchup. The Charybdis, you can see it has its eyes. Does the Charybdis actually have eyes? Okay, it doesn't have eyes. It has its mouths, I guess, set on the Mortis Engine, but the Mortis Engine can kind of just maneuver away here, and some MLG, blocks with the Corpse Carts and so on. That Balefire is affecting. It's kind of hard to say how much it's affecting because we don't see the Winds of Magic for either player, but big old degenerate blob fight. Murderous Prowess kicking off already, and this is exactly what the Vampire Counts want, is a giant degenerate blob fight where, they can kind of just mash everything on top of each other to where the Dark Elves just don't have enough models. You can see they're completely surrounded here. Krell has been summoned literally on top of Blackguards. And Krell, I mean, he says anti-large in his tooltip, but really he's anti-everything. And Krell will kill some Blackguards if he chooses to do so. Yeah, there we go. Get some attack animations, Krell. Start to whack some value. Oh, look, actually going after the Death Hag. Interesting. Kemmler himself, a little bit in danger here, but at the same time, he's not in that much danger. Blades of the Blood Queen, you can see, just get overwhelmed. Even the Blackguards themselves getting just overwhelmed here by all these numbers of stuff. And there's armor-piercing damage. Like, yeah, the Krotors are going to take damage, but they'll still deal damage in return. As long as the Mortis Engine's not taking too much damage, everything's fine. But even still, like, this degenerate drain here. The blobbing, I see a lot of Dark Elf players blob, and there's definitely something to that, but Mortis Engine doesn't care about your fancy debuffs. It still just kills you. So, yeah, I mean, all of the elves are potentially tricky for Vampire Counts, but this might just be my extreme bias against Vampire Counts. I think they're all winnable matchups. Yeah, most people don't play, like, very cav-centric builds, and, like, here, this isn't necessarily a cav-centric build at all. In fact, there's no cavalry, no Blood Knights, no Black Knights, but I just, for me, like, Black Knights with Lances and Barding are an unsung hero against all of the elves, because their shock damage is really good for their cost. They're, like I said earlier, they're Reichsguard for 1050, but, also they have model healing. And you can take, like, a very cost-effective, cheap front line with still, like, 4 of them, maybe 1 or 2 Blood Knights, I don't know. For me, the elves, like, I just look at it on paper, like, okay, elves have low HP, cavalry do shock damage. Therefore, cavalry good against elves. I don't know. Doomfire Locks, I don't know. I'm kind of out on Doomfire Locks right now. Even Slaanesha's Harvesters, like, it's not worth it just for the Soul Stealer. And I don't think... Yeah, I never take counts into elves. Yeah, I would... If you can avoid it, I wouldn't take counts into elves. But for me, personally, if I were to pick... Like, let's say I'm playing Undead. Let's say I pick, for whatever reason, I get bitten by a vampire and pick counts in a best of 3. If I were to, like, for the elves, if they could only pick the elves, I would definitely ban... Wood Elves is just gross. I would ban Wood Elves, probably. And High Elves versus Dark Elves. That's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. You know, Dark Elves don't have Tempest and they don't have Healing, so based on those two things, I might want to say Counts into Dark Elves is the one I would actually prefer, but at the same time, Dark Elves, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do some more testing and see, but from a Vampire Counts perspective, if you're having problems in this matchup, I definitely would recommend Kemmler. Yeah, if you're having problems with ground blobs, he's a little bit vulnerable to getting sniped. If your opponent goes full air squad, you might have some serious problems protecting him, but if he's cheap enough, you know, you can still get good value from him before he dies, then it's good enough. Grave Guards, though, here do a great job and rack up quite a bit of value with the Corpse Cart support. Sternsmen kind of get ransacked, but that's okay. Mortis Engine also, obviously, great value, left unopposed mostly, just drains everything to death. Very fun, not really, but very strong. Scav's Grass on the White Kings don't actually do all that much damage this time around, but Kemmler also surviving. Unfortunately, we don't get to see Krell's damage, but yeah. Yeah, let's see. Marathi gets mad value as always, but the Blackguards don't quite pay for themselves. Same thing here. Blades of Blood Queen, like all of them over 1,000 damage value, but not quite to where they needed to be. And granted, fighting vampire counts, you're going to get inflated value kind of across your entire army because of the amount of healing they bring, but the Charybdis is also a weird one for me. I don't know about this. You probably just take another Halberd in its place. Not like you really need a monster. Yeah, see ice power, but the problem with that, using that as like an argument for the matchup, is you have a sample size of you, right? Which you're arguably one of the best Dark Elf players out there right now, so I don't know if it's necessarily fair. But it is a very strong build, don't get me wrong. Like, exactly what you just listed is what I would recommend in this matchup. But, yeah. No, you don't. The monsters and the shrines are kind of traps here, because the vampire counts can often snipe them out. So yeah, you have ranged and magic nukes to kill Mortis. Exactly. The key is to keep your crossbows, your handbows alive, because if your handbows get, like, let's say they get hit by some cavalry charges, or like if you get surrounded and you know, boxed in, and then they can't really shoot, then you'll have problems. That's probably the biggest issue, but as long as you can keep those handbows alive, keep the magic nukes alive, you can definitely deal with Mortis engines. Charybdis would be a great anti-large beat stick if you could heal it. That's true. That's true. I don't know ice power, because I personally, this is a long time ago, even before the mass change, but I have played against almost that exact build myself and beat it pretty handily with a cavalry build. I think I had like 3 lances and barding and 2 blood knights. But like I have I forgot where Zag again. Whoops. Don't look. Dark Elf Kite good against vampire counts? You would think, but sometimes you don't have enough ammo. Like, it kind of depends on you being able to get in range of high value targets enough to shoot them, right? Like, if the vampire counts player is screening well, they can, and they also have like the chill guys. Granted, you can kind of counter them with your own stuff, but you have plenty of magic damage to try and counter them. But I don't know. For me, like, kiting the vampire counts, it can work. But if the vampire counts player plays well enough, like, sometimes you don't get enough damage on the stuff that actually matters, and you just lose. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. The Charybdis is, against infantry blobs, it's so bad. Yeah, then that's the thing, is the air... preparing for the air goon squad versus the ground kind of halberd box that's the problem, right, for vampire counts players in that matchup. But yeah, if you take the cavalry build, if you take like a very heavy cavalry build, you can it's tricky to win air. You know, if they go heavily into air, like, you have to play smart with your Blood Knights and only countercharge when the dragons come to the ground, basically. And just try and avoid breath attacks as best you can, but it's hard. I mean, I would say that probably works better than the ground box against a cav build, but it's weird because not a lot of Vampire Counts players actually play cav builds. Anyway, let's move on. We've got, yeah. So Puggington takes that game 1. We're now on to game 2, which you guys might have seen already, but... Yeah, I mean, if they go with a purely ground build and you go with an air squad, then you can, and you're like free to use your dragon breath attacks, then, you know, Vampire Counts air can work well against Dark Elves. But even still, I don't know, like, other than the breath attacks, I don't find a lot of benefit of going in the air. Anyway, Skaven versus Warriors of Chaos here. We've got Big Bird leading the charge, Mirror Guard, some Chaos Marauders, Marauder Horsemen, and the Spawn. I love the pick of the Spawn in this matchup. Ton of DPS against Skaven. They're unbreakable. Just a huge pain to deal with. They'll even trade well against Skaven monsters for the most part because of that high weapon strength and low armor. Speaking of which, we've got Throt here, some Rat Ogres, Plague Priest on the Furnace, Poison Wind Globes, Chaff, Skaven Slaves, and so on. Yeah, right, that's me, Ice Power. Like, I don't trust myself not to make misplays, so I would probably take a disgusting Marathi Halberd box into Vampire Counts. But, yeah. That's interesting. You know, I really think the Counts players need to explore cavalry builds more. Like, coming from an Empire mains perspective, like, I see a lot of people just go heavily into the monster focus, which is fine, or like even like an infantry build can be pretty good, but I don't know. I think Vampire Counts cavalry is fantastic. Wish I had all of it on other rosters, but anyway, big frontline engagement getting underway. You can see the Spawn come in here and just mulch on most units that they come into contact with. Like Rat Ogres versus Spawn, I'd probably give it to the Spawn just because they have way higher weapon strength overall. Like double the weapon strength basically of Rat Ogres, so that is... Yeah, let's see. We got some match... I don't know if I've ever actually watched these two units fight each other 1v1. They're not really 1v1 here, as there's Marauders involved, but... Yeah, when I stop and think about it, the Warriors of Chaos Spawn are like a direct counter for Rat Ogres, basically. They literally have double the weapon strength. And Rat Ogres don't have any armor or melee defense, so it's not like they can resist. But anyway... Marauder Horsemen come through, they're going to just javelin everything. The Chaos kind of initial push right there was enough to break apart the Skaven formation for the most part, but at the same time, Skaven are slightly ahead on the balance of power as a lot of the Chaos troops start to quickly run out of steam, like the Spawn starting to get dragged down by attrition. I will say, Spawn are not great in an attrition game, which is, you know, to be expected perhaps, but... Globes generating some great value now. We've got the summoned Rat Ogres just for some additional numbers here. And Throt versus Big Bird. Throt definitely going to have the advantage in this match. Poison is a pretty big deal here. And, I mean, magic damage versus Throt's physical resistance is pretty good, but still not a great engagement for Big Bird. Especially if the cart comes over and gets involved. The 2v1 situations are really, really bad. But these globes were able to stay safe, and as a result, just did a ton of damage here. If we take a look, yeah, definitely paid for themselves already, both. And counting, so there's that. Gotta love a unit that just, you know, they throw in their globes, they literally run in the other direction, and they accumulate value while they're running away. That's hilarious. You have double globes for a single piece of mortar. Yeah, now, yeah, with the price nerf. And I would say, in some situations, you do want to have the mortar, but the globes, you basically always want to have at least 1 or 2 globes, because they're just so cost-effective. They do get terror-routed here, though. Big Bird trying to make a push. Hounds come in, they're going to clean up and start to chase those globes off here. Got some Spawn still left alive, and the Rat Ogres do eventually get basically... not quite finished off by them, but take a bunch of damage. Marauder Horseman coming back. The issue is Big Bird is going to have a tough time. There's not really a lot of great units for taking down Throt. I mean, he's taking damage from the Spawn, But besides that, nice little Plague Breath there. And big old Big Bird. Searing Doom going to be called down. Unfortunately, it was on like a summoned clan rat that immediately disappeared. I think, though, if you put that Searing Doom like right on these rat ogres, I bet they actually take a lot of damage from it. I need to test that out and see. But summoned, or non-summoned rat ogres, rather, getting terrified. Proving true to the name of Rout Ogres. Yeah, Balance of Power really heavily favoring Skaven at this point, I guess just because of the character situation. Still got these two powerful single entity characters still alive, but the Skaven army itself is just falling apart here. So let's see. Could be an interesting late game. Actually, the tankiest in terms of weapons teams, yeah. Yeah, you only need a single missile to hit to get value. But at the same time, you only need a single missile to hit, and the dot is definitely where the damage comes from. But the globes have enough unit models that they actually do. I mean, they have missile strength. They have legit armor-piercing missile strength as well. 22 explosive missile damage per shot. Considering there's 36 models, like that actually does damage in and of itself too, right? Like, yes, the dot is obviously very good, and that's the whole reason why you bring them, but I mean, this missile damage is legit as well, especially against something that's, let's say, weak to magic damage. But Warriors of Chaos managed to completely even things up at this point, so despite the Skaven, you know, seeming to be ahead on the balance of power, a little bit falsely inflated due to the fact that one of these characters has summons, and, you know, well, both of them have summons, I guess, but, yeah, just the character abilities and so on. Wolf Rats do come in. Get a little charge on these Marauders. They're going to hold their leadership, though. Well, nope, not if Throt comes in. They're going to immediately get terrified, but guess what? Wolves also immediately get terrified. They, in fact, shatter. And without any support here, things are looking a little dicey. Big Bird can also cycle charge to his heart's content, and he doesn't have the most charge in the world, but 40 charge bonus is something. Searing Doom as well going to be called in. Let's watch the damage on the single entities here. Yeah, doesn't do much. As expected. But Big Bird, ooh, nice attack there. Falls over immediately as soon as he gets the attack animation. Big Bird, what are you doing? What are you doing? Such a troll. Plague Priest on the front of the cart just screaming, I'm sure. But, yeah, all of a sudden, Throt taking some damage. Gets hit a couple times by Big Bird. The spawn, couple spawn come in from the side here. And even just the two of them, or one of them, I guess, again, it's 160 weapon strength. Ridiculous. Warriors of Chaos managed to pull out a very close win there. Credit to Hanodis for staying calm there. Puggington, unfortunately, looking good, but once a lot of his stuff got chased off there, things kind of started to turn around, so definitely a good job to these Hounds and the Marauder Horsemen for chasing stuff off. Spawn initially came in. I thought they maybe did more damage value than that, but the one that hung around definitely paid for itself. Big Bird also, great job by him. This is probably the best matchup for him. He's still a powerhouse in a lot of matchups. Maybe not meta as he used to be, but this is one where he's definitely still meta. Yeah, Marauders do their thing of getting crumped and also dealing some damage back. Mirror Guard, 1,111 damage value. Beautiful. Very appropriate somehow. Yeah, the Furnace didn't quite get enough value at the end of the day of what it needed to. The Wolf Rats also, I mean, they can generate really nice value, but their leadership is so low, they just run away so easy. It's a little bit of a problem. Two of them do great, though. Rout Ogres come in, they rout, they fight. You know, they do their thing. The Globes, maybe not quite as much value as I would have guessed initially, but yeah, it ended up being pretty close. I think if Puggington had been able to finish off Big Bird at some point there, that could have definitely turned things around. GG. Yep, just when you lose. Yeah, we actually just did your win right before this. So, yeah. We're now going to do the final game in this series. And, Beastman versus Dark Elves. Yeah, man, this group has been super competitive, Puggington. I will definitely take a look at your other games as soon as they get posted. But, you need Slave Slingers for the spawn here. Yeah, Slave Slingers are a decent counter for the spawn. The spawn, I don't think, were so much of an issue other than the one that kind of hung around until the late game. But Big Bird's an interesting one. You know, actually, I've seen people use... It's risky because he's a super squishy lord and he doesn't have a lot else going for him. But the assassin, the master assassin generic one, he's got a missile resistance debuff that actually makes killing Big Bird a little bit easier for Skaven. I think it's a potential good pick. You have to be careful with him, though. I mean, he's very squishy. Especially if he tries to fight Big Bird in melee, Big Bird's just going to murder him, but... yeah, anyway. Beastman versus Dark Elves. We'll start with the Beastman here. I have Morslib, Regiment Cygor. Very good pick against all of the Elves, in my opinion. Lots of Razorgore herds as well. I've got some Centaurs, Butchers of Kalkengard, Ungor Raiders. A couple of Scourge Runner Chariots. Got some Repeater Crossbows here, Supreme Sorceress, Lore of Fire, some Warlocks, and Dark Riders with shields, single Manticore. So the Cygor is good against Elves just because it deals so much damage. I mean, it will one-shot unit models for a lot of units, but especially Elves, like, no question. If the rock even, like, comes within a foot of them, it will just absolutely destroy them. So... not Morathi here. Fire Sorceress gets the Warp Gaze. She's then going to pull away without having taken too much damage. A little bit of a hit-and-run charge here by the Scourge Runner Chariots. They've got to be careful, though. These Razorgore herds are in for a quick response, potentially. But nice little kind of side charge by the Slaanesh Harvesters. Thing about these pigs, though, is their weapon strength is so high. Man, they're going to get really nice value if the... stuff can't pull away. Soul Stealer gets put down there, though, to try and counter the pigs. And a nice burning head as well. Just rips up those Ungor Raiders. So pretty decent stuff so far. Over here, though, this is potentially a problem. These Dark Riders get hard crumped by Centaurs and Razorgore herds. Butchers of Kalkengard also starting to roll up this flank here. Manticore gets tossed in to go after the Brashim Lord Wild, but... with the Butchers of Kalkengard also being there and the Centaurs and Razorgores now able to kind of collapse this pocket, that Manticore might be in for some trouble. Back in the center, the ranged focus fire on the Eye of Morslib, definitely very good. Unfortunately, though, these Chariots have had a hard time pulling away and utilizing their ranged attacks. Also, really nice flank attack here by these Poison Warhounds. Yeah, a little bit of damage from these Ungor Raiders on this Supreme Sorceress. Lord of Fire is always nice. Mordorous Prowess going off, and suddenly Morgr could potentially be in trouble, but right now, potentially not also. Manticore could try and sweep down and get at him, but a heavy push now from the Beastman on this side, just collapsing the left flank of the Dark Elf formation. Doomfire Warlocks sweeping around, and they do get a nice little kind of counter collapse here with the Manticore and the Dark Riders all in a rear charge, so a potential pushback situation here. But they definitely need to win out on that fight, and a nice burning head as well, roasting out some of those Centaurs. Will it get the Ungor Raiders? No, not quite, just barely missing them. Unfortunate for the Dark Elves, but more forces being thrown in on both sides into this big escalated fight in the background, including the summon spawn here, but a nasty Vile Tide. Nasty, nasty Vile Tide there, and that Vile Tide is going to be very good against this Dark Elf army in general. Besides, I mean, there's not really any high armor units to speak of. The Scourge Runner Chariots have some armor, but not a lot, right? They're, what, like 50, 80? Yeah. Spam mobility with a couple chav. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. The Lore of Fire Sorceress, you know, I like to a degree, but at the same time, I don't know. I would probably go with something else. The Eye of Morslib is a rough one, though. I mean, you can potentially kind of pick it with the... Scourge Runners, but it just has so much HP that it's going to be tough to work through at this point. Matchup. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Morathi double Manticore, I would say, is very good here. I would even try, I mean, it's not meta. Definitely Morathi's going to be more competitive, but I might even try Recarth on the Chariot with double Manticore here. Or even Recarth on foot. I mean, Recarth on foot, anti-large AP, reasonably tanky. Can also throw around his buffs and debuffs, but somehow I just like having the anti-large Chariot. Just makes me happy for some reason. Anyway, GG though. Great series. Canadians ended up taking home the win there, but a very, very good series. And add value there from the Brashim Lord Wild on those Vile Tides. Such a good spell. Ungor Raiders doing a great job here. We got the Centaurs also. Man, add value on the one Pigs do their thing. Butchers of Covent Garden don't really have to do too much. Actually, all things considered, the Eye of More Sleep was managed very well. Didn't quite get finished off there, but I mean, it was mostly a non-factor in the battle in terms of damage. And I would imagine, yeah, repeater crossbows and probably the Scourge Chariots actually did some pretty decent damage value. Bear Spears kind of getting stepped on, and the Warlocks, man, I'm kind of out on Warlocks right now. I don't know about you guys, but I probably would not take Warlocks in any matchup. Even though, like, there's some situations where you might want the Slanesh Harvesters, I'll give you that. But I feel like in most matchups, like, I don't know, I would not take Warlocks. That's just me, though. Antcore, good stuff. Anyway. Always cheaper, yeah. Morathi is definitely the most competitive choice, especially right now, by far. Like, it used to be that you could take Malekith in some matchups, but Malekith is no longer viable, unfortunately. So, yes, Morathi. If you want to be competitive, you take Morathi, pretty much. That's how it works. But we've got one more series here. Yeah, Warlocks seem to not do a lot. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out on Warlocks. They're, for how much they do, how expensive they are, they're just, yeah. You want more cav, you have to take them. I mean, you could just use your repeater crossbows in melee. Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, take Scourge Runner Chariots and call them cavalry. Anyway. Yes, we're back with Dargon Turtle, and on Yaga this time. Yaga playing Norska. Got kind of an old school Norska build. 4 Berserkers against Empire. Potentially risky. They're very weak to shock cavalry, but there's not too much shock cavalry for the Empire's side. We've got Ice Wolves, Maws of Savagery here. Love this pick of the ROR. Even though they're vulnerable to fire damage, they still punch back really hard. Got Wolfric on a horse. Lore of Metal, very strong. Plague of Rust, Final Transmutation. Some more Ice Wolves. I noticed that a lot of Norskin players have been heavily favoring the Ice Wolves, which I actually love this. They have lower model count, but 42 weapon damage and 38 charge means they deal really good damage, actually. Yeah, they're just hard to use if you have ham fists like me. But anyway, Pistolier is doing some kiting initially. Gets a big thumbs up from me. We've got Boris the Todd up in the air. A cannon. I don't necessarily love this pick against Norska, but crossbows, handguns, Free Company. Kind of mix, a grab bag mix of infantry skirmish. The Empire Knights are pretty decent, but no Knights the Blazing Sun. He did bring Lore of Fire. He does have Flaming Sword of Ruin. But did he not even bring Kindle Flame? Oh no, he does have Kindle Flame. Okay, I was gonna say, why would you ever? Anyway. But Boris comes back here, and would you believe it? Wolfric, maybe forgotten about. At the same time, though, he could just, like, stand and fight here, potentially. If he gets the debuff on Boris, maybe gets a little bit of an armor debuff as well from the Plague of Rust. That's not necessarily an engagement Boris wants to take straight up. Pistoliers, you can see here, trying to outduel the Marauder Horsemasters. Horsemasters, a little bit of armor, a little bit of javelin damage, favors them, but the Empire player, playing a little bit passively here, actually misses charges with these Empire Knights onto the Maws of Savagery and these Ice Wolves. They're going to now follow up along with the great weapons, too, and just bad situation initially for the Empire out on that flank. Nice Burning Head, too, just ripping up some of those Empire State troops. Boris comes down, a lot of the Spearmen and so on, trying to go after the Ice Wolves and the Skin Wolves, but they, yeah, they're doing fine. Meanwhile, Empire are able to protect their back line. Cannon potentially generating some value here, and like these Empire Knights moving into block. Pistoliers in a little bit of a vulnerable situation. They're going to have to fall back and just allow those crossbowmen to now take it. Yeah, the problem is Norska brought a lot of stuff to just fight in melee, and it's collapsing pretty quickly. This is why, me personally, when I play Empire into Norska, I don't typically take hardly any ranged units besides maybe a couple of Pistoliers. Like cannons, infantry skirmishers, similar to Beastmen, like, it's so hard to protect them against Norska. In my mind, it's better to just countercharge. Just hit Norska in the face really hard with your Knights. You know, Kindle Flame procs, Knights of the Blazing Sun. Potentially you have the Demigryph Knights with Banner of Eternal Flame, or whatever with Banner of Eternal Flame from the Warrior Priest, but Boris getting caught up here. Happy Javelin Day to him. Ice Wolves, Skin Wolves, just bad stuff. Bad stuff. For Empire, things are not looking good already. And Norska, one thing I love about Norska's games is they do go pretty quick. Like, win or lose, Norska is going to, you know, have their battles play out pretty fast, typically. I mean, there's obviously some Norscan armies, some Norscan games that go a little longer. Your typical Norska game, like, on average, is probably a good minute or two shorter than just your general game on average, right? Yeah, anything in the middle is kind of meh. That is true. Dark Elves' Rush is pretty strong. Their Kite is really strong as well. But yeah, the kind of balanced Dark Elf builds have a little bit of a weird time. You definitely can do some things, but yeah. Why is Malekith no longer meta? So he lost like 5% physical resistance, and more than that, like his mount options, like a lot of the game has kind of been buffed around him, right? Like the mass changes to spears and other infantry units make using the dragons a little bit harder. So dragon, not only does it, you know, not quite as tanky, also you don't get as many soul stealers. You know, it's a little bit trickier to use. It's very expensive. I mean, like his other mount options, he does okay, but he just doesn't have a lot of HP at the end of the day. And his soul stealers, because he only has 2 of them, whereas Marathi has like 5. Well, I think, yeah, he can get what, like 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky. Whereas Marathi can pretty consistently get like 4 to 5 in a long battle. Like her damage output because of that is actually much more, and she ends up being practically in you know, in more practical sense tankier in a lot of ways. She's faster on her Pegasus and a much smaller target as well. Yeah. Yeah, cold ones are amazing if you use them properly. I totally agree. Totally agree. Dwarfs are good or bad? Dwarfs are okay. They're a little bit predictable still, but cheap anti-large AP cap is amazing. It's true. Their HP pool does make me a little bit sad, but yeah, their damage output potential is incredible. So let's go ahead. We'll see if Dagon Turtle can pull it back. Yeah, it depends on the matchup a lot. Like against Empire, for example, like you can generally avoid bad engagements because Empire heavy cavalry, other than Demigryph Knights, is, you know, slower. They're 66 speed. Demigryph Knights too, like that's not always the most cost-effective trade. If you get a good charge with the Cold One Knights, they will trade very cost-effectively into the Demigryph Knights, right? So anyway, Greenskins versus Bretonnia, and I have to say, on Yaga, this Greenskins build, other than this Stone Troll, like if you delete this Stone Troll, this could have been like a game 1, like late stage Greenskins build. Like we've got Wurzag on the pig here, we've got Orc, Boarboy Biggins, 1 Spider Rider, Wolf Rider over here, the Skulkers, which you don't see people take too many Skulkers anymore. They're still a very good unit though. Another Spider Rider Biggin over here. We've got a couple of Orc Biggins on foot as well, 8-Peak Loons. Yeah, Mangy Marauders, Spider Rider Archers. This is literally a classic. Again, take the Stone Trolls out. This army could be transposed from like at many points in game 1, honestly. For Bretonia's side, we've got Rapants on foot, wearing the pants with Felix. He's definitely got metal pants on, you can see here. Yes, and then the Hippogriff Knights, got some spears, we've got some cavalry here, questing knights, very solid always, spearmen at arms, yeah, archers, the 1 trebuchet, regular old field trebuchet, men at arms with pole arms, interesting. The Hippogriff Knights is a pretty decent pick here. They're a little bit vulnerable, you have to be careful not to get them nuked, but if they can do the nuking, the terror and the damage output is pretty legit. Gotta be careful though, Wurzag with this constant stream of buffs, and the big boss, you know, a lot of people have kind of forsaken the big boss because Bob is here, and Bob is, you know, really good. But this big boss, for how cheap he is, probably one of the most underrated single entities in the entire game. Only 3,000 HP, but he's got poison, he's got 60 charge, he's got 360 weapon strength. No assassination debuff this time, but he could take it if he wanted to. Nice little character assassination debuff, but yeah, Questing Knights, a beautiful job kind of screening them through the lines here. The goblins eating the charge, and then the Boar Biggins, the Spider Riders turn back around when it's not necessarily a fair fight. Trebuchet firing in there, big old burst in the center. Oh man, that's rough. Stone Trolls just getting nuked by the Hippogriff Knights. That's some great value. I mean, I say nuke. There's not actually that much damage. It's mostly just the terror, right? That's an issue. But the Hippogriff Knights also not taking much damage in response yet, so that's pretty good. Greenskin Skirmish Cab pull up. Let's see, where's Wurzag and the buff squad? Here in the center. Wurzag's taking some damage, but not too much yet. Repents is coming over there. Wah being popped. Repents and Felix gonna fight Wurzag. Probably not an engagement he wants to take, so he'll, you know, squeal on out of there. Let's just switch places with the big boss. Let the big boss take that fight. And you can see that the disruption is pretty real. The rush kind of washing up and largely breaking through many points of protection, whereas these skirmishers are not able to fire any longer. The Hippogriff Knights still relatively healthy. They still have all their models online, but is the healer even still alive is the big question. Yeah, she's fine. She's back here also. A little bit of Earth Blood there. Help heal those Hippogriff Knights back up. Also catches the spears a little bit, which is fine. And Rapunzel herself. Not that she really needed it. But, yeah, the Bretonnians holding out for the time being. But this rush, man, look at these Skulkers getting in here basically untouched. Goblins just trade so cost-effectively against men-at-arms as well that this is a kind of an ideal situation for them. Constant stream of buffs from Wurzag, who is got to be a little bit careful here. He's a squishy boy. Potentially could get killed, but as long as he keeps him safe, I mean, there's not a lot of mobile response. It's not like there's, you know, paladins in the air or even on horseback that could potentially come challenge him. So as long as he avoids the spears and halberds and avoids, you know, the pants squad over here. Another wall being popped. Hippogriffs come down. Stone Trolls come back. Nice rear charge from the Spider Riders here. Keeping those Hippogriffs locked on the ground, and they're done for. Oh, those are Questing Knights. Yeah, anyway. Hippogriffs are over here. They, a little bit of a rear charge. Got these Questing Knights also formed up, but surprisingly, those Boar Biggins don't immediately get terrified. They actually hold out for a little bit of time, which allows these Wolf Riders and the other Boar Biggins to sweep up and around. A really nice charge in here. Yeah, 50 charge, anti-large armor piercing, classic Boar Biggins. Knights of the Blazing Sun. It depends. Knights of the Blazing Sun, it depends on if you have a Kindle Flame active or not. If you have a Kindle Flame active, they probably beat pretty handily. But out of all the Empire Cavalry, Knights of the Blazing Sun are actually the squishiest. I want to say they have the lowest melee defense. They definitely have the lowest armor out of any Empire Cavalry. So other than the magic resistance, they really are not as tanky as the other Empire Cavalry. They will take more damage, but I mean, up against something like, again, Doomfire Warlocks, like, they're going to just laugh. And against Soul Stealer, I mean, I think they maybe lose, like, 2 or 3 less models to a Soul Stealer, which is pretty significant. I mean, that's definitely something. Suns annihilate Cold Ones, especially if they have a Kindle Flame. But if not, it might be a little bit closer. 90 armor is not a lot. Yeah. The Savage Boar Biggins, you know, actually the Savage Orc Boar Biggins, they have an extra charge bonus buff, which, you know, they don't have the same anti-large as their regular standard counterparts, but at this point it's the Pants Squad. We can see that Ondiaga is going to take this series 2-0. I had to include 1-2-0 in here, right? Yes, exactly. Knights of the Blazing Sun are the lowest armor of any Empire Heavy Cav, which, considering their cost, you definitely got to be careful with them. They're the most shock of any of the Empire Shock Cavalry, I would say. But anyway, very well played there. I love this build, I have to say, on Diaga. It just makes me happy. It gives me lots of nostalgia about good times past. Wurzag getting crumped a little bit there, but also tossing out enough buffs. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of goblins trading cost effectively into men-at-arms. Like, oh man, almost 600 damage value on goblins is awesome. These guys definitely pay for themselves. Skulkers also come in, 138 kills. Didn't really have to challenge cavalry and use their smoke bombs on cavalry, which is obviously why you bring them. But they also, it turns out, steamroll peasants with the buffs all active. Nice job. I didn't get the Fanatics cast in the center, but I'm sure there was a nice one. Biggins, they do their thing. Spider Riders, awesome. I mean, it's just kind of a nice combined win for everyone. The Mangy Marauders, too, man, 1310 damage value. I've seen some crazy Mangy Marauder games lately. They are one of the best RORs in the game. I forget consistently that they really are. They're just so good. For Dagon Turtle's side, a little bit rough there. Not questions about this hero squad. I mean, it's kind of like, go back to the discussion about Morathi being the meta for Dark Elves. If you're not taking Fanchantress double Paladin with Bretonnia, you're not being competitive with Bretonnia. Like, that literally is the most competitive way to play them. So you kind of retool this leadership core in that direction, and suddenly this build is a lot stronger. Obviously, you still have to keep the Fae protected, but, I mean, with Guardian, that's not super hard. Yeah. Rapunzel when he should have Fade. That's true. That's true. Yep. So that's it for today's stream. Thank you all so much for coming out. It's been a real pleasure, I have to say. Lewin is better than Faye in a couple matchups, arguably. I mean, I could still make a case for Faye even in those matchups, but maybe like dwarfs, you know. Even then, though, they just die 25% slower to her drain. It's not like they don't die to it. Anyway, that's going to be it for me for today, though. Big thanks for everyone for coming out. By the way, I am going to be streaming some Rome Remastered probably tomorrow, most likely. So stay tuned for that. Big thanks to all my supporters and patrons and everyone like that. Yeah, I guess we'll close it out with some music. If I can get this back up here. Cheap worse demis. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, with more models. If Dark Elves had healing, Cold Ones would be insane. You know, someone was saying recently that, you know, in the lore, Dark Elves actually have access to all of the common lores of Magic. So, you know, from a lore perspective, they should actually have Lore of Life, which I think would if just giving them Lore of Life by itself would make them probably potentially a top tier faction. They're kind of balanced around the fact that they don't have Lore of Life right now, right? Which is something, but yeah, Cold Ones are 36 models. Yep. The 36. They're kind of in between the 24 and 45, right? Same thing for Cold One Riders. So in some situations, they get outnumbered by cheaper, more cost-effective Cav. But like against Demigryph Knights, they actually outnumber Demigryph Knights. And if we look, just as a quick kind of comparison here, in terms of weapon strength, it is a pretty interesting comparison because like Demis are in an interesting spot right now where they're good. They're not. They're very good, but they're, I wouldn't say game breaking by any means, but like just as a comparison, so 400 extra points on Demigryph Knights, and they have you know, like higher weapon strength and significantly higher charge, especially, but like with the anti-large, it's not that much of a difference in weapon strength. In fact, it's the same weapon strength, right? So almost, not quite, not exactly, but pretty close. So really the benefit you're getting is just the charge bonus, and the fact that you have less models doesn't really equal that out. So in a head-to-head fight, the Lance Demis, which is the Demis you would take now, most likely, would trade pretty well. Now, if it does compare a little more favorably, obviously, for the Demis, if you look at the Halberd ones, they're 52 weapon damage with that additional bonus versus large. So, I mean, they'll obviously trade better, but even still, if the Cold One Knights like get a rear charge into the Demis with Halberds while they're already engaged on something else, they can generate insane value. It's really good for the Cold One Knights. The biggest issue is the HP, right? Like even like 700 less HP than Demigryph Knights, and even like Empire Knights I think have more HP at 850. Yeah, Not that much more, but they do have more, so that's your biggest downside. Cold One Knight's HP pool is pretty small. Yeah, they have more HP per model, that's true, but yeah. Never underestimate lower costs. It's true, and especially with buffs, like earlier we saw in a game, I don't know if you guys were here for this one, but we did see Recarth using the Lash on Cold One Knights, and like the cost for weapon strength on Cold One Knights is really good. So it does make sense, you know, you're using this Lash ability, get that extra damage on something that already has very good damage. The charge bonus is nice. A little bit of extra charge bonus is always nice for a unit that's potentially going to be charging into something, but like especially that weapon strength. Using Lash on Cold One Knights is a great way to help them trade even more cost effectively. You have a lot of ways too to, you know, help swing things in their favor, whether it be other buffs, debuffs, like Cascading Fire Cloak is awesome for them because it helps them have more melee defense to actually stand and fight, and gives them a little bit more AP damage as well. I mean, you've got Enfeebling Foe is obviously very good for them. Yeah. Maybe Halberd Box becomes more meta. I guess Morathi is still so strong that you wouldn't still never take Lore of Life. Or maybe you just take Morathi with literally no spells, or just, I guess, you already only take her with Soul Stealer, right? So maybe you would just take an additional caster with, like, Earthblood or something on top of that. Because you could potentially have the magic if you didn't want to get all 5 Soul Stealers. You could, you know, get 4 Soul Stealers and then a couple Earthbloods, but interesting to think about. Blackguards are overpriced. I don't know. I think Blackguards are actually the best elite halberds in the game, which is not saying a lot, but I think they're, in comparison, like, they actually compare pretty favorably to other elite halberds. Phoenix Guard are the worst. Phoenix Guard are the worst because their weapon strength is terrible for an elite halberd. Like 36 weapon strength for a unit, that's 1,400 points. Oh no. And like, compared to elite halberds, like, it's almost 10 extra weapon strength, right, for Blackguards over Phoenix Guard. Blackguards 100 less points, right, 8 extra weapon strength. And they also have immune to psychology baseline. They also get Murderous Prowess is huge for halberds because it gives them more melee attack, right, which is something they don't have a lot of to begin with. Phoenix Guard 450 less HP. I mean, just terrible. Elite infantry is mostly not usable in high level play. It's true. You do see, against, like, obviously, like, vampire counts, you will see Blackguards pretty consistently. And I would say, actually, out of any elite halberds, Blackguards are the ones you do see most consistently. Like, there are definitely matchups where you would want them. And 1,300 is not too bad in comparison. Like, Chosen with halberds are definitely way too expensive. Chosen with shields are really, if you're going to make a Chosen work, these guys are the easiest to make work because they're the cheapest. And like 60 melee defense is legit, very legit. And a 60% missile block chance too, it's super strong. So infantry is easy to abuse. Yes, less so than it used to be, but it still is to a degree. You can kind of just avoid it. The key is in matchups where you can't just avoid it, right? And like vampire counts are a pretty good example of that. Although we did see earlier how vampire counts were able to just completely crump like an elite halberd build. So there's that. Yeah. I would say elite halberds, they see more use than they used to, definitely. The infantry bracing change helped them not be so abusable, but they are still, you know, a unit that's relatively slow, can only be in one place at one time, somewhat vulnerable to side and rear charges, especially just elves in general having low HP. Like, at least Black Orcs, one of the reasons Black Orcs are usable and so good, in fact, as elite infantry is because their HP pool is redonkulous. They have 8,000 HP, which is insane for an elite infantry unit. Like nothing else, I don't think, even comes close, right? Yeah, Chosen don't even have that much. Definitely none of the elves have that much. Blackguards don't even crack 7,000, and they're literally the highest of any elf infantry. Humans don't have any infantry even on that tier. Lizardmen, let's see, do Saurus? Yeah, Temple Guards, I guess, have as much HP almost, but still, their, like, other stats are not nearly as good. The other thing, too, Black Orcs 29 charge is actually kind of insane on a unit that's this good, right? Because you think about that, they're hitting for 79 weapon damage on the charge, 79 weapon damage, and, you know, if assuming they don't have any buffs, they're also hitting for, what is that, 60, I can math, 65 melee attack on the charge. And like other elite infantry, I mean, you know, they just don't even come close. And obviously the halberds you wouldn't expect, but like 24 charge doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but charge bonus gets like scaled insanely fast on infantry units because they have so many models. And like Black Orcs, legit charge bonus, legit HP, immune to psychology baseline, only 1150, which is a lot lower than a lot of other elite infantry. Like, yeah, Black Orcs are awesome. But there's a reason for that, right? And then you can actually kind of, once you drill down, you can see the reasons why they're so good. Ironbreakers also suck for the most part. Yeah, their blasting charges are kind of their only source of damage output, whereas Chosen with shields can actually get some damage done in the right situation. Like, they will actually pay for themselves if you get the right fights with them. The Ironbreakers like have to get their charges to pay for themselves. Yeah, most of it turns into AP damage. Exactly, Blueberry. Yeah, anyway, that's kind of my end discussion for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Big thanks. Good to see you guys. I will be back probably tomorrow for Rome Remastered, and then we'll be doing some more World Championship streams. Probably another one midweek next week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. But watch for that. So, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. We'll